Darth Vader's lore stretches far beyond what is shown in the movies. There are many darker stories and unanswered questions that have never been fully explored. Tonight's compilation takes a closer look at those unknown chapters of his character. So sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. We always enjoy seeing where you're watching from, so feel free to leave a comment letting us know where you're listening from.
For 19 years, Darth Vader was the most feared man in the galaxy. When his ship appeared, governments surrendered and soldiers ran. He worked as the Emperor's enforcer and hunted down Jedi. Everyone who saw his black mask knew someone was about to die. But the galaxy did not know who he really was, and the Empire kept his past a secret. Before he was Vader, he was Anakin Skywalker, a child on the desert planet Tatooine, owned alongside his mother Shmi by a junk dealer named Watto. Every day he repaired machinery to prove his worth, and every night he dreamed of escape. Yet he had abilities no one could explain. He could sense things before they happened, understood machines as if they were alive, and was the only human who could pilot pods, racing vehicles far too fast for ordinary reflexes. Then one day, Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn discovered him and tested the boy's blood. Anakin had more force potential than any Jedi ever recorded, even Master Yoda himself. Qui-Gon became convinced this child was the chosen one, who would bring balance to the Force. Determined to free the boy, Qui-Gon bet Anakin's freedom on a pod race. The boy won, but the victory was incomplete. Watto refused to include Shmi in the deal. Anakin left Tatooine that day, knowing his mother remained a slave, and that guilt would stay with him for years. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council did not want to train him because he was too old and too attached. But when Qui-Gon fell to the Sith Lord Darth Maul, his dying wish was for his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi to train the boy. Over the next 13 years, Anakin became a powerful Jedi, but he also became Darth Vader, not through combat or conquest, but through lies and tricks. People lied to him, made false promises, and used his deepest fears against him, until the hero became the monster. The details of Vader's story are drawn from official Star Wars canon sources. We highly recommend exploring his complete journey through these stories. The film The Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars television series reveal the Jedi Order's core rule: start early. For 1,000 generations, children came to the temple as infants. They learned to release attachment before they could form it, so by the time they understood what love meant, they had already learned to let it go. Anakin arrived as a child, but by Jedi standards, the window had closed years ago. The Council saw the problem immediately. When Master Yoda reached through the Force, he found something troubling: deep fear. This was not a fresh start. This was a child already shaped by slavery and loss, with a bond to his mother he would never freely release. As a result, Master Mace Windu questioned whether training him was wise, arguing that the attachment was too deep and the fear was too strong. They were right to worry, but instead of addressing the problem, they made things worse. And so, the Order failed to help him. The reason was simple. Under Jedi tradition, Padawan instruction was set. The same training program applied to all students, and those who struggled received standard correction rather than different approaches. The system assumed all students could be shaped through the same processes. It had worked for centuries, but it had no way to handle someone like Anakin, who had already formed deep attachments and experienced major loss. For a child from Tatooine, the temple must have seemed completely different from anything he knew. And Qui-Gon's approach to the Force had been unusual. He studied ancient Jedi prophecies that most of the Council ignored as old stories, and believed the Force had a will of its own. He thought Jedi should follow its guidance, even when it went against Council rule. And this perspective shaped how he saw Anakin, not as a problem to be managed, but as a prediction coming true. The Council's rejection of Anakin reflected deeper tensions within the Order. Some Jedi believed their traditions had become too stiff, too focused on rules rather than the living Force. Others believed strictly following tradition was what had kept the Order stable for 1,000 generations. Anakin's arrival brought these disagreements out. During his early years at the Temple, Anakin struggled with more than just emotional control. He had trouble connecting with other younglings who had grown up together since infancy. They shared references and experiences he did not understand. His accent marked him as an outsider, and his background as a slave was something none of them could relate to. The other Padawans viewed him with a mixture of curiosity and resentment, since his raw power was clear to anyone who could sense the Force. Some saw him as a threat to their own advancement, while others simply did not know how to work together with someone so different from themselves. Being alone made him talk more with Chancellor Palpatine, who had been watching him for years. Palpatine had taken interest in Anakin since his arrival on Coruscant. Where the Jedi kept their distance, Palpatine offered friendship. He invited Anakin to his office, asked about his training, and listened to his frustrations without judgment. To a lonely boy far from home, this attention felt like kindness, but Palpatine was already planting seeds he would harvest years later. Outside of those meetings, Anakin found comfort in working with machines. The Temple had workshops where Padawans could practice building and repairing equipment, and Anakin spent hours there, relaxing while working, which reminded him of his childhood skills. The droids and machines did not judge him or expect him to be something he was not. Beyond the workshops, the Temple's architecture reflected Jedi values: tall towers and open spaces designed for meditation. The design was meant to inspire peace and focus, but for someone who grew up in small slave quarters, the huge temple was overwhelming. Thousands of Jedi had trained within its walls before Anakin arrived, and their traditions went back thousands of years. As time passed, during his years as a Padawan, Anakin developed a reputation for skill and carelessness. He excelled in lightsaber combat with extraordinary reflexes, and his connection to the Force allowed him to see threats before they fully appeared. In competitive exercises, he often defeated enemies with years more training. His emotional control, however, remained weak. Meditation exercises that calmed other students left him upset, and lessons on releasing attachment seemed to make him grip tighter. The Council received regular reports about his progress and his problems. Some members believed he would eventually adapt, while others feared he never would. The difference between his power and his self-control grew with each passing year. The Order had rules for everything: schedules for training, meditation, and meals, along with expectations for behavior, dress, and speech. The freedom Anakin had dreamed of was replaced by structure. Meanwhile, the Sith had been watching the whole time, but the Jedi assumed they were gone. The Jedi believed their ancient enemy had been destroyed 1,000 years ago, but the Sith had survived in secret, and they understood something the Jedi did not. Fear and anger were not weaknesses to be released. They were tools to be used. Central to Jedi teaching was the belief that fear led to anger, anger led to hate, and hate led to suffering. The Sith were the final expression of this pattern. Where Jedi sought peace through letting go, Sith sought power through emotional intensity. This philosophy had roots going back centuries. About 2,000 years before the Clone Wars, a Sith Lord named Darth Bane set up the rule of two. Only two Sith would exist at one time: one master and one apprentice. This was meant to prevent the infighting that had weakened the Sith before, and the system survived in secret while the Jedi believed the Sith were gone. Then, Darth Maul's appearance on Naboo changed everything. The first confirmed Sith sighting in nearly 1,000 years. The Jedi had believed the ancient enemy was extinct, but now they knew the Sith had been hiding and growing stronger in secret while the Jedi stopped looking. The debate about training Anakin remained unresolved when Qui-Gon fell on Naboo. With his final words, Qui-Gon asked Obi-Wan to train Anakin, and a master's final wish could not easily be ignored. Obi-Wan agreed, but he faced serious limits from the start. He had just completed his own training hours before Qui-Gon fell, and he was grieving, adjusting to the new duties, and had not asked for this student. Worse, Obi-Wan had no power to override teachings or change training programs, and the tools he had were designed for students who arrived without earlier problems. The training arrangement had problems from the beginning, but neither of them saw it. The contrast between master and student was clear. Qui-Gon had been an unusual Jedi who often disagreed with the Council and followed his own judgment. Obi-Wan was different. He believed in following rules and tradition, and because of this mindset, he tried to train Anakin the same way he had been trained, applying standard methods to a non-standard student. As depicted in the film Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars television series, Obi-Wan suspected Anakin was hiding something. He noticed the late-night communications, the frequent requests for missions near Coruscant, and the way Anakin looked at Senator Amidala. But Jedi did not pry into each other's emotional lives, and Obi-Wan was uncomfortable with emotional conversations. His failure to address the clear secrets created a barrier that prevented the closeness Anakin needed. They were not alone in seeing the problems. Other Jedi noticed the tension too. Some council members discussed whether Obi-Wan was the right master for such a difficult student, while others argued that changing masters would only create more instability. In the end, the decision was always to continue with the existing arrangement and hope for improvement. Part of the problem was Obi-Wan's own background. He had been raised in the temple from infancy, never knowing his birth family or forming attachments outside the Order. The methods that had worked for him were the only methods he knew. Jedi training emphasized group identity and surrender of personal will, an approach that conflicted with Anakin's survival mindset from his early years. Jedi methods emphasized emotional control, letting go of outcomes, and acceptance of loss. Each principle went against his experience. Adding to these problems, Jedi teaching discouraged attachment, but never taught emotional processing. The Order had methods for preventing attachment, but no methods for addressing attachment that already existed. Emotional struggle was treated as a personal failing, requiring meditation, not as something that needed direct care. The early years were difficult, and Anakin even considered leaving the Order at one point. Obi-Wan convinced him to stay, but the underlying tensions remained. They worked well together in the field, and their combat teamwork became excellent. Yet personal conversations rarely moved beyond duty. The connection remained professional rather than familial. In time, the distance between them would matter when Anakin needed guidance. As the years passed, Anakin's power grew, but his struggles did not fade. His success in combat trials surpassed his peers, yet his meditation scores remained low. He excelled at combat in ways that made senior Jedi uncomfortable, and the gap between his power and his self-control widened. He was becoming what the Council had feared, extremely powerful and lacking proper guidance, and someone outside the temple was waiting for exactly that. Then, in 22 BBY, everything changed. In the Attack of the Clones film, the Separatist movement declared independence. Thousands of star systems left the Republic, and diplomatic solutions failed. When a clone army was discovered on Kamino, the Jedi Order was reorganized for War Command, and Jedi Knights became generals overnight. But before the war began, Anakin returned to Tatooine because disturbing visions of his mother made him go back. Shmi had been freed years earlier by a moisture farmer named Klieg Lars, who married her, but she had been captured by Tusken Raiders. The Tusken Raider camp was hidden in the Jundland Wastes. Anakin tracked his mother there using skills he had learned as a slave, reading the desert, following traces that others would miss. When he found her, she was barely alive, having been held captive for weeks and treated badly enough to destroy her health. With her final breath, Shmi told her son she was proud of him, that she loved him, that seeing him again was enough. And after she was gone, Anakin was never the same. This was the first time Anakin broke Jedi rules this badly. It would happen again. The boy who had dreamed of freeing slaves became a man capable of destroying an entire camp, men, women, and children, in his grief. 10 years of fear and guilt came out all at once, and in his grief and anger, he acted in ways that broke Jedi principles. This event set a pattern that would repeat. When someone Anakin loved was threatened, every lesson he had learned disappeared. Only his power remained, and he used all of it. Afterward, he told Padme what had happened, and she listened without judgment, offering comfort instead of accountability. Obi-Wan never learned the truth because Anakin kept it a secret. Hiding his actions became a habit, one that would grow more dangerous over time. It started with keeping one event hidden and grew into keeping an entire marriage hidden, each secret needing more secrets to protect it. And soon, war would give him the perfect cover for those secrets, and the perfect excuse to let his anger loose. The Clone Wars television series, spanning 7 seasons, explores this 3-year period in detail. Those 3 years of continuous warfare changed everything. The war made the Jedi Order into a military organization and transformed the Republic government. For Anakin, it provided a situation where his aggressive style helped him instead of hurting him. As a result, he rose quickly through the ranks, becoming a Jedi Knight shortly after fighting began, and then a general commanding thousands of clone soldiers. His promotions were based on battlefield results. His willingness to take risks produced victories that careful commanders could not match. But every risk had a cost, and Anakin would pay for them soon. The soldiers under his command were not volunteers, and they faced another limit. They aged at twice the normal rate. A clone who looked 30 had lived only 15 years, meaning the entire army would age out of service within decades. This also meant questions about their rights had built-in time limits. They would be gone before those questions could be settled. This was by design. The Kaminoans had built obedience into the clones' genes, prioritizing compliance over independent thinking. Yet despite this programming, emotional bonds formed anyway. Clones who fought together developed loyalty to each other, gave themselves names, and formed friendships that their creators never intended. But hidden inside each clone was a dangerous secret. Every clone carried an inhibitor chip in their brain, capable of overriding their independent thinking when activated by specific command codes. They were living people with control devices inside them. The Jedi trusted these soldiers completely, and that trust would get almost all of them killed. Yet some clones discovered their chips before Order 66. A clone trooper named Fives investigated the chips and tried to warn the Jedi, but his warnings were ignored because the conspiracy was too well hidden, and he was silenced before the truth could spread. One notable exception was Captain Rex, who served under Anakin and later had his chip removed, allowing him to survive Order 66 as one of the few clones who could resist the programming. Most had no choice when the Order came. In many ways, this mirrored Anakin's own childhood. He had been property with a control tool inside him, and the clones were property with control chips in their brains. He had been valued for his usefulness. They were valued for theirs. At the same time, the Republic war economy created pressure for quick victories. War bonds funded military operations, and public support was tied to victory speed. Political leaders demanded decisive action, so economic pressure shaped military decisions. Republic command measured success by territory gained, not lives preserved. A mission that achieved its goal with heavy losses was still considered successful. Generals who delivered victories received resources, while generals who moved carefully were questioned. Under these conditions, Jedi values were pushed aside for command structure. Jedi generals reported to Republic military command for decisions and were rewarded for results, not restraint. War changed the rules, and every friendship Anakin made could be used against him. This danger grew as the war was fought across hundreds of worlds at the same time. Battles raged from the core worlds to the Outer Rim, with some campaigns lasting weeks and others lasting months. The scale of conflict was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. Jedi teaching discouraged emotional bonds with clone troopers, and commanders were expected to accept losses without grief. But Anakin's leadership style broke this teaching. He fought alongside his troops, learned their names, and cared about their well-being. This approach built unit loyalty that produced advantages in battle, but it also built attachments he had no training to manage. One example was the Battle of Jabim, one of the war's lowest points for Anakin, when Republic forces were overcome by Separatist attacks combined with brutal weather conditions. Obi-Wan was believed dead after an explosion, and Anakin had to lead the retreat without his master. The experience of thinking Obi-Wan was gone affected him deeply. Another loss, another person taken from him. When Obi-Wan was eventually found alive, their reunion was complicated. Anakin had grieved, had commanded in his absence, and had grown in ways that changed their relationship. The war was reshaping their relationship faster than either could process, and that distance would cause problems later when Anakin needed Obi-Wan most. Another difficult moment came during the mission to Zygeria, which forced Anakin to face his past. The planet was a center of the slave trade, and Anakin had to go undercover in a society built on the same institution that had defined his childhood. Seeing slavery operating openly, seeing beings treated as property, brought back memories he had tried to forget. His anger during this mission concerned Obi-Wan, but the mission's success meant those concerns were set aside. The 501st would later follow him to attack the Jedi Temple, and the chips would force them to obey. But that was years away. For now, despite his dark future, Anakin's tactical innovations became studied throughout the Republic military. His willingness to personally lead fighter squadrons into combat, unusual for a general, produced victories that normal tactics could not achieve. And he developed the strategy of targeting enemy command ships directly, accepting higher personal risk for faster decision of battles. The 501st Legion developed their own identity under his command, painting their armor with blue markings that distinguished them from other units and called themselves Vader's Fist long before that name took on a darker meaning. The teamwork Anakin built would make them very effective, both during the war and after. Among them, Captain Rex became Anakin's most trusted officer. Their relationship went beyond commander and soldier to become close to friends. Rex provided honest counsel when other clones simply followed orders and questioned decisions he thought were wrong, and Anakin valued this honesty in ways he could not explain. Their partnership began early, during the Battle of Christophsis, one of Anakin's first commands. He and Obi-Wan led Republic forces against a Separatist blockade, and though Anakin's aggressive tactics eventually broke through, the cost was major on both sides. It was during this battle that Ahsoka Tano arrived as his assigned Padawan, sent by the Council in hopes that responsibility for his student would force Anakin to grow up. Soon after, the Second Battle of Geonosis showed the war's increasing intensity. The Separatists had rebuilt their droid factories on the planet where the war began, and Republic forces had to retake it at a major cost. Anakin's actions during this campaign were effective but risky, pushing boundaries that more cautious commanders would never approach. Later, the Citadel mission tested him in new ways. The prison had been designed to hold Jedi, with countermeasures for every Force ability, forcing Anakin to depend on tactics rather than power. The mission succeeded, but it cost the life of Jedi Master Even Peel. And Ahsoka witnessed the death, learning another hard lesson about war's price. Years earlier, the Force had shown him exactly what he would become. He forgot the vision, but it still came true. The Mortis experience left marks that Anakin could not fully remember. In one of the series' most significant arcs, the father, the son, and the daughter, beings who embodied the Force itself, had shown him his future. He had seen himself as Vader, and had seen the destruction he would cause. The son had used this knowledge to briefly turn him, and though the memories were erased, traces of those feelings remained, a sense that something bad was coming. The pattern repeated itself across dozens of campaigns: Ryloth, Felucia, Salukami, and each battle added to Anakin's reputation as someone who could win difficult engagements. And each battle also added to the toll on his mental state, as the war provided no time for recovery between operations. The Umbara campaign showed how far the war had pushed Jedi values. Anakin was called away during the battle, leaving his troops under another Jedi's command, Pong Krell, who purposely sent clones into dangerous situations while secretly planning to join the Separatists. The clones eventually realized the betrayal and stopped him, showing that even Jedi could be enemies. The clones who served under Anakin became even more loyal to him personally, and the Jedi could not watch over their own because the war was too big. Council members who should have been watching nights were instead commanding operations across multiple star systems, and no one watched Anakin closely enough to see how he was changing. The Order's peacetime training offered no preparation for this. All the while, the Order was weakening, and it would soon be destroyed. During this time, Ahsoka Tano became Anakin's Padawan, assigned to him against his wishes, as the Council hoped teaching would help stabilize him. Instead, Anakin formed a genuine bond with his student. Ahsoka was still young when she became his student, and the war did not allow time for standard training, so she learned by fighting alongside her master. Over the months and years, a genuine bond formed between them, not what the Council had intended, but real nonetheless. They developed trust through shared danger, and Ahsoka learned to challenge Anakin's decisions when she disagreed. When Ahsoka was falsely accused of causing an explosion at the Jedi Temple, depicted in the series' 5th season, Anakin fought to prove her innocence. The Jedi Council expelled her before the truth came out, and even after Anakin captured the real culprit, another Padawan named Barriss Offee, and the Council offered to take Ahsoka back, she refused. Their willingness to abandon her had shown their true priorities, and she walked away from everything she had known. The Council had shown they would abandon their own. Anakin remembered that. Ahsoka's departure hit Anakin like abandonment, another person walking away. But it also showed him that leaving the Jedi was possible, and that the Order was not certain. Throughout the war, Anakin formed relationships outside Jedi control. He worked closely with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, who took personal interest in him and listened to his complaints about the Council. But Palpatine's interest was not innocent. He was the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, secretly directing both sides of the war. He had watched Anakin since his arrival on Coruscant as a child, positioning himself as a sympathetic listener who agreed with Anakin's complaints with the Council. While the Jedi maintained distance, Palpatine offered friendship, and while the Council criticized Anakin's methods, Palpatine praised them. The contrast was planned. He was building trust he would later use. Palpatine understood attachment in ways the Jedi did not. The Jedi saw attachment as a weakness to be avoided, but Palpatine saw it as a tool to be used. When the moment came, Anakin would have nowhere else to turn. And Palpatine's control extended far beyond Anakin. The Separatist forces were led by Count Dooku, a former Jedi who had left the Order. What few knew was that Dooku was secretly Palpatine's apprentice, Darth Tyrannus. The Separatists did not know they were being controlled by the same person who controlled the Republic, and both sides served Palpatine's plans. Another major Separatist leader was General Grievous, a cyborg who collected lightsabers from Jedi he had defeated. Grievous was ruthless and effective. Many Jedi fell to him during the war, making him a high-priority target. As the war's final months approached, the pressure increased. The Outer Rim sieges were some of the most difficult campaigns, and Anakin and Obi-Wan spent months on distant battlefields with limited contact to Coruscant. The stress of command built without relief. In the war's final days, Ahsoka returned to help Anakin and Obi-Wan one last time at the Siege of Mandalore. They parted without knowing what was about to happen. Hours later, Order 66 would activate, and the last moment between master and student passed without either understanding it was a farewell. 3 years of war had changed Anakin in ways that were difficult to see from the outside. The aggressive behavior that had worried the Council during his training was now praised as good leadership. What the war taught him went against what the Temple had taught him. The Clone Wars television series shows the war left scars on everyone who took part. Jedi who survived Order 66 often struggled with guilt. They had led soldiers into battle, formed bonds with those soldiers, and then been betrayed by them. Some survivors never got better, while others channeled their grief into resistance against the Empire. The clones themselves had the shortest time to process what happened, as their accelerated aging meant most would not survive more than a few decades after the war. Those who had resisted Order 66 or removed their chips lived as fugitives, while those who had followed their programming lived with the knowledge of what they had done. The civilians caught in the war's crossfire had their own stories. Millions of people across thousands of worlds lost family members, homes, and livelihoods. The separatist cause had attracted genuine believers who wanted independence from Republic corruption, and many of them discovered too late that they had been used by a Sith Lord. But while the galaxy burned, Anakin's real war was happening inside him, and he was losing. Throughout the war, Anakin's secret marriage to Padme was built on deception from the start. They could not live together openly, so Padme kept her residence on Coruscant as a senator, while Anakin kept his quarters at the Jedi Temple. They met when duties allowed, and every interaction carried risk of discovery. The secrecy required constant attention. Padme had to hide her eventual pregnancy from everyone except her closest handmaidens. She could not visit doctors openly, and she could not prepare publicly for motherhood. The joy of expecting a child came mixed with constant worry about discovery. 3 years of hiding took its toll. Anakin could not share his marriage with anyone who might support him through difficulties. He could not seek advice from Obi-Wan about relationship struggles. Every problem had to be solved without outside help, and being alone was killing him slowly, though he was too proud to admit it. Padme struggled too. She was one of the youngest senators in the Republic, at the same time trying to prevent the Republic becoming a dictatorship while hiding a marriage that could destroy her career. She maintained contacts with other senators who shared her concerns. Bail Organa of Alderaan, Mon Mothma of Chandrila, watching for signs the Republic was turning into a dictatorship. These concerns sometimes put her at odds with Anakin, and the demands of both roles were huge. She traveled often and worked long hours, and the pregnancy made everything more difficult. Through it all, Padme's handmaidens knew about the marriage. Sabe, Dorme, and the others who served her had figured out the truth or been told directly. They kept the secret out of loyalty to Padme, but they worried about the risks she was taking. Some of them believed Anakin was wrong for her, too volatile, too possessive, though they kept these opinions to themselves. To maintain contact, the secret communication methods Padme and Anakin developed became increasingly complex. They used coded channels, coded messages, and trusted go-betweens, and every conversation risked being discovered. The stress of maintaining these systems added to the strain of the relationship itself. Yet no one knew how dangerous those secrets would become, or that people would die because of them. As the months passed, Padme's pregnancy forced difficult decisions about her political future. She could not hide it for an unknown time. She considered retiring from the Senate or revealing the marriage and facing the consequences. But each choice carried costs she was not ready to accept. The final weeks of her pregnancy coincided with the war's most intense period, and she continued attending Senate sessions even as her condition became harder to hide. Her staff arranged her schedule to reduce public appearances, but the deception required constant attention at a time when she had little energy to spare. Meanwhile, Anakin's behavior during her pregnancy alarmed her. His obsession with the visions, his inability to sleep, his increasing paranoia. She saw him getting worse, but could not reach him. Every conversation about the future ended in arguments or silence, and the man she had married was becoming someone different. The war only made things worse, separating them for long periods, with Anakin spending months at a time on distant battlefields. Communication was unreliable. Each splitting brought uncertainty about reunion, and each return was brief. Shortly before the war's end, Padme told Anakin she was pregnant, knowing the pregnancy would eventually become visible and that discovery was certain. Then, the pregnancy brought visions. The film Revenge of the Sith shows Anakin experiencing force-driven nightmares of Padme in danger during childbirth, vivid and repeating, filling his sleep until he was afraid all the time, as night after night he saw her suffering and heard her calling his name. The visions were accurate, but Anakin's actions to prevent them made them happen. This was not the first time. He had experienced accurate visions before. Years earlier, he had dreamed of his mother's distress on Tatooine, and those visions proved true. And when he finally went to her, she passed away in his arms exactly as he had foreseen. His nightmares had come true before. Why would these be any different? The visions always showed the same thing: Padme in a medical facility, in pain, calling out for help and calling his name. And then she was gone. The details changed slightly from vision to vision, but the ending was always the same. Anakin tried to analyze the visions, looking for clues about location, timing, or what might cause the outcome, but they provided no useful information. They showed him what he was afraid of, but not how to stop it. The more he tried to understand the visions, the more obsessed he became. He started researching Force abilities related to preventing harm, but the Jedi archives contained limited information, since most Jedi teachings emphasized accepting loss rather than fighting it. His behavior changed in ways that others noticed. He became more irritable, snapping at soldiers under him who made minor mistakes, and his patience disappeared entirely. And Padme saw the changes most clearly. But even Obi-Wan noticed something was wrong. When Obi-Wan asked about his mental state, Anakin deflected and claimed the stress was from the war, and his habit of keeping secrets stopped him from asking for help, even when help might have been available. Sleep deprivation made everything worse. The visions came every night. Anakin stopped sleeping most of the time, and being tired made clear thinking impossible. Years of war had not broken him, but lack of sleep and constant fear were wearing him down. His mother's fate had shown the cost of inaction. He had stayed at the temple following orders while she suffered, and the lesson seemed clear. Following rules meant losing the people he loved. The Jedi had no answer, but Palpatine did, and his help came with a terrible price. Desperate for answers, Anakin sought help from the Jedi Order. He approached Master Yoda for guidance, describing his visions without revealing who they were about. Yoda's advice followed standard Jedi teaching. Attachment leads to fear of loss, and fear of loss leads to the dark side. He suggested Anakin release his attachment and accept whatever outcome the Force provided. But for Anakin, attachment was not the problem, loss was. The response did not match the need. For centuries, the Jedi had debated the nature of visions. Some believed visions showed fixed futures, while others believed they showed possible futures that could be changed. But the debate was never settled, and no clear guidance existed for someone experiencing disturbing visions. Anakin's visions felt completely real as he saw Padme suffering and heard her calling his name. The visions repeated night after night, and each time he woke, he was more convinced that the future they showed was certain. The Jedi had no tools for preventing guessed outcomes. Acceptance was the only choice offered. While Anakin struggled, Palpatine offered something different. In one of the film's most memorable scenes, Palpatine revealed he had built a relationship with Anakin throughout the war, positioning himself as someone who understood his frustrations with the Council. When Anakin revealed his fears about Padme, Palpatine offered hope, telling Anakin about a Sith ability that could prevent harm. A Sith Lord named Darth Plagueis had discovered how to use the Force to protect life, and only the Sith could teach this knowledge. The story Palpatine told was designed to offer hope while creating need. Darth Plagueis had been Palpatine's own master, and the power to prevent death was real, or so Palpatine claimed. But Plagueis had been unable to prevent his own death because Palpatine had killed him in his sleep, taking his knowledge and his position. The irony was perfect and deliberate. Palpatine offered Anakin the power to save Padme while hiding that he had murdered the only person who might have actually had that power. The knowledge Palpatine promised may never have existed at all, just bait for a trap Palpatine had been setting up for decades. Anakin was about to give up everything, his honor, his friends, who he was, for a lie. The offer was aimed right at Anakin's fears. Palpatine had observed him for years and knew about the mother who had passed away while Anakin followed Jedi rules. And he knew about the wife Anakin had married in secret. During this period, the Council's treatment of Anakin increased his distance from them. They appointed him to the Council, but denied him the rank of Master, then asked him to spy on Palpatine. They used him as a tool rather than trusting him as a member. Anakin felt betrayed by this treatment. He had served the Republic loyally for 3 years, won battles that others could not have won, and earned respect from soldiers and civilians alike. Yet the Council still treated him with suspicion. Palpatine used this treatment to deepen the divide. He told Anakin the Jedi feared losing power and suggested they wanted to control the Republic themselves. The idea was wrong, but believable to someone already suspicious, so Anakin's doubts about the Council became certainties. Mental pressure came from all directions: fear of losing Padme, guilt over his mother, distance from the Jedi Order, influence from Palpatine, lack of sleep from repeating visions, and stress from years of war. Each problem made the others worse, until he could not think clearly. Every system that should have supported Anakin had failed. The Jedi Order could not help because their teaching did not address his needs. His marriage could not help because secrecy prevented honest communication. And his mentor could not help because Obi-Wan did not know the full situation. Palpatine was the only one offering solutions, and his solutions required giving up everything else. Within days, Anakin Skywalker would be gone, and the man who replaced him would be someone else entirely. The film Revenge of the Sith captures the tragedy in a single night. In just a few hours, Anakin Skywalker was gone, and Darth Vader took his place. Each action led to the next, and each choice closed doors that could not be reopened. By morning, the galaxy was different. Thousands of Jedi would die, a democracy would fall, and the man responsible would spend the rest of his life regretting what he could never undo. The change began when Palpatine revealed himself as Darth Sidious, dropping all pretense in a calculated moment. He had waited until Anakin was desperate enough to consider his offer seriously. Decades of planning had led to this single conversation. Despite his inner conflict, Anakin's first instinct was still that of a Jedi. He reported Palpatine's identity to Mace Windu. His training had produced the right response, even as his doubts pulled him in another direction. This was Anakin's last chance to stop, and he did not take it. Windu gathered Jedi Masters to arrest the Chancellor and ordered Anakin to remain at the temple, but Anakin followed the arrest team to Palpatine's office anyway and found Windu standing over a seemingly defeated Palpatine. The other Jedi had fallen. Windu was about to strike, and Palpatine claimed to be too weak to resist. Two people needed Anakin to choose, and only one could win. Windu represented the Jedi Order, the institution that had trained him, criticized him, and failed to help him when he needed it most. Palpatine represented the promise of power to control the future, the ability to save Padme through means the Jedi refused. Windu argued Palpatine was too dangerous to leave alive. The Chancellor controlled the courts, and a trial would not produce justice. Palpatine argued he was the only one who could help Padme, and if he fell, the knowledge of protecting life would be lost. Both were telling some truth, and both were also lying. At that moment, Anakin chose to stop Windu. Palpatine immediately attacked with Force lightning, and the decision took seconds. The results were permanent. A Jedi Master had fallen by Anakin's choice, and there was no going back. Palpatine named him Darth Vader immediately after, and Anakin accepted because acceptance was the only path forward. He had chosen a Sith Lord over a Jedi Master, and the Order would never take him back. His only remaining ally was Palpatine. Now there was no way back. Anakin Skywalker was gone, and only Vader was left. Within hours, the Emperor issued Order 66, the command code embedded in every clone trooper's inhibitor chip. Clone commanders across the galaxy received the order simultaneously through coded channels, and when those two words were spoken, the clones turned on their Jedi commanders instantly and without hesitation. The army had never been built to win the war. It had been built for this moment. Across the galaxy, the order took effect. On Utapau, Obi-Wan was fighting General Grievous when his troops turned on him. His Jedi instincts warned him just in time, and he escaped by fleeing into the planet's sinkholes. On Kashyyyk, Yoda was working with Wookiee forces when his clone escort received the order. The ancient master sensed the betrayal through the Force before the shots came, eliminated his attackers, and escaped with help from the Wookiees. In Felucia, Aayla Secura was not so fortunate. Her troops surrounded her during a patrol and fired without warning, giving her no chance to protect herself. The same thing happened across hundreds of worlds. Jedi who had led clones for 3 years were cut down by soldiers they considered comrades. 1,000 generations of Jedi ended in a single day. 1,000 generations of Jedi ended in a single day. Most Jedi died in those first hours, and the survivors faced a terrible choice: resist the Empire and almost certainly perish, go into hiding, or give up the Force entirely and disappear into the galaxy's population. Most chose to hide. Inside the temple, the younglings had been taught to trust Jedi Knights. When Vader entered the council chamber where they were hiding, they looked to him for protection. One of them asked what they should do. The moment showed how completely Anakin was gone. These children saw a Jedi, not a threat. The security recordings of that night would later be found by Obi-Wan and Yoda, and watching them was one of the most difficult moments of Obi-Wan's life. He saw his former student doing things no Jedi should ever see. The recordings confirmed what the Force had already told him: Anakin was gone. Afterward, the journey to Mustafar gave Vader time to process what he had done. He told himself that the actions were necessary, that the Jedi had been planning to overthrow the Republic, that Palpatine's new order would bring peace. The excuses came easily, but believing them was harder. What he did next would affect him for years, but he did it anyway. The Separatist leaders on Mustafar had been used by Palpatine without knowing it. Newt Gunray had started the crisis on Naboo that began Palpatine's rise to power. Wat Tambor had funded the droid armies, and San Hill had financed the entire Separatist movement. They had believed they were building an independent state, but they had been building Palpatine's empire. When Vader ignited his lightsaber in that conference room, some of them tried to negotiate, while others tried to run. None of them survived. The war that had killed millions ended in one room on a volcanic planet, with one man killing the leadership of an army that had never been real. While Order 66 swept the galaxy, Vader led the attack on the Jedi Temple. Clone troopers of the 501st Legion followed him into the building where he had trained. He knew the layout and knew where people might hide. Everything he had learned as a Jedi was now used against them. The 501st Legion had served under Anakin throughout the Clone Wars. These were soldiers he had led for 3 years who had followed him into battle countless times. Now, they followed him into the temple, and the inhibitor chips made them tools with no choice. The soldiers who had trusted Anakin now followed Vader's orders, with no idea what they were really doing. Vader harmed Jedi of all ages that night. The temple that had trained him for over a decade was destroyed by his hand. A pattern of commitment explains what happened next. Each action required justifying the earlier action. Each step demanded the next step, and stopping meant admitting everything he had done was wrong. After the temple, Palpatine sent Vader to Mustafar. The volcanic planet housed the Separatist leadership, and Vader's mission was to end the war by removing the leaders he had fought for 3 years. The Separatists had served Palpatine's purposes, and now those purposes were complete. Mustafar was a harsh world of lava rivers and volcanic activity, where mining operations harvested minerals from the molten rock. The Separatists had chosen it as a hiding place precisely because it was remote and difficult to reach. The Separatist leaders were confused when Vader arrived. They expected peace negotiations, since they had been told someone would come to end the war. They did not understand that ending the war meant ending them. Palpatine had used them as tools, and now discarded them. She believed there was still good in him. She was wrong about when, but years later, her son proved she was right. By this point, Padmé's pregnancy was visible, and she was close to giving birth. The stress of what she had learned, combined with her physical condition, put her in danger. She had traveled across the galaxy to save her husband, but found someone she did not know. After Vader completed his mission, Padmé followed him to Mustafar. She had learned what he had done and came to bring him back because she still loved him. She was the person he thought he was protecting. She tried to talk to him, to remind him of who he had been, offering to run away with him and leave everything behind. She still believed there was good in him. Unknown to Vader, Obi-Wan had hidden aboard her ship. When he emerged to confront his former student, Vader thought Padmé had led his enemy to him. In his twisted thinking, she had chosen Obi-Wan over him, and he used the Force against her, attacking the person he had done everything to protect. One of them would survive unhurt. The other would lose his legs. The duel on Mustafar lasted longer than any fight either had experienced. They moved through the facility, across narrow platforms over lava rivers, through rooms filled with machinery, and their fighting styles were perfectly matched. Obi-Wan had trained Anakin, and each knew the other's techniques intimately. Obi-Wan fought defensively, as he always did. His Form 3 style was designed to outlast enemies and wait for mistakes. Vader fought aggressively, pressing forward and trying to overcome with power. This showed their personalities: patience against passion, control against release, and the lava environment added danger beyond the duel itself. Eruptions sent molten rock into the air, platforms shifted and collapsed, and the heat was intense enough to make breathing difficult. Both fighters were tired, drawing on the Force to continue when their bodies wanted to stop. The confrontation between Vader and Obi-Wan ended at the edge of a lava river. Obi-Wan gained higher ground and warned Vader not to attack, but Vader attacked anyway. Obi-Wan's counterstrike left him badly injured, and he fell onto the volcanic slope. That was when the suit he would wear forever became necessary. Obi-Wan left him there, taking Vader's lightsaber, but unable to bring himself to finish things. Perhaps Obi-Wan believed the injuries would be fatal, or perhaps some part of him hoped Anakin still existed inside the burned body, or perhaps he simply could not bring himself to end the life of someone he had trained for over a decade. Whatever the reason, his choice, whether mercy or failure, let Vader survive, and Palpatine sensed Vader's condition through the Force and traveled to Mustafar personally to retrieve his new apprentice. The visions came true because of what he did. His actions to prevent loss caused the loss. The medical droids that reconstructed Vader worked without emotion. They did not know who he had been or what he had done. They just followed their programming, replacing damaged tissue with artificial parts and installing the life support systems that would keep him alive. The process took hours, and Vader was awake for parts of it, feeling the steps through painkillers that could not fully block the sensations. The droids worked to keep his failing organs working. His lungs were too damaged to function without help. His limbs were beyond saving, and the burns covered most of his body. Palpatine watched the procedure with satisfaction. The suit was designed on purpose to be uncomfortable. More advanced artificial limbs existed and better life support systems were available, but Palpatine chose older, less comfortable technology. The constant pain would feed Vader's anger, and anger powered the dark side. A servant who needed his master to survive could not fight back. When Vader first heard his own breathing through the mask, he understood his life had completely changed. The rhythmic mechanical sound would become one of the most well-known sounds in the galaxy. It would let everyone know he was there and make them afraid. But in that first moment, it was just the sound of his new life, stuck in a suit he could never take off. The first time he tried to stand in the suit, he fell. The artificial legs responded differently than natural limbs. The weight distribution was wrong, and the sensory feedback was delayed. He had to learn to walk again, to move again, to live in a body that no longer felt like his own. When Vader woke, his first question was about Padme, and Palpatine told him she had not survived. Everything he had done to save her had led to losing her. Obi-Wan had left Mustafar with her body, and she gave birth to twins, Luke and Leia, before she passed away. Medical droids found no physical explanation. She simply lost the will to continue. Everything Anakin had done was wasted. Padme was gone. The Jedi were destroyed. The Republic had become an empire, and he had been rebuilt into a machine dependent on the suit that now imprisoned him. He had become what he feared the most: powerless, controlled, and alone. While Vader was being rebuilt, Obi-Wan and Yoda hid the twins immediately after birth. Luke was taken to Tatooine, to the Lars family, while Leia was adopted by Bail Organa of Alderaan. The children were separated to reduce the chance of discovery, and Obi-Wan went into hiding on Tatooine, where he would spend 19 years watching over Luke from a distance. The master who had failed to save Anakin dedicated his remaining life to protecting Anakin's son. The boy who would one day destroy the Death Star was hidden on Tatooine, and Vader had no idea his son was alive. The Darth Vader comic series by Marvel Comics explores what came next. The Republic that had stood for 1,000 years ended in one day. Palpatine declared himself emperor before the Senate, and the democracy he had pretended to serve became a dictatorship he openly led. And the emergency powers granted during the war became permanent powers for the Empire. The speed of the change was part of the plan. Palpatine had arranged the war exactly to create conditions for this moment. He controlled both sides and knew exactly when each piece would fall into place. The Clone Wars were never about winning. They were about creating an empire. From that day forward, Vader would spend 19 years serving an empire he could never leave. Vader knew none of this. He did not know Palpatine had started the war, or that the clones were designed to turn on the Jedi from the beginning. He only knew that he had made choices he could not take back. The Jedi survivors scattered across the galaxy. Those who escaped Order 66 went into hiding, gave up on the Force, or fell in the years that followed. And a tradition that had lasted thousands of generations was reduced to a few survivors. Some tried to preserve teachings in secret, while others decided the Order's failures meant its teachings should end. Some Jedi gave up the Force entirely, stopping all use of their abilities in hopes of blending into the galaxy's population. This approach sometimes worked. A Jedi who did not use the Force was difficult to find, but the Force often revealed itself in moments of crisis. A Jedi who instinctively saved someone became a target. Other Jedi tried to maintain their traditions in secret. They took Padawans and passed down teachings, believing the Order could survive in hidden form until the Empire fell. Vader made finding these secret teachers a priority. A single surviving teacher could train new Jedi, so the threat had to be eliminated completely. As part of this transformation, Vader's first assignment after Mustafar was building a new lightsaber. Sith tradition required him to take a kyber crystal from a Jedi and corrupt it through the dark side, a process called bleeding that turned the crystal red. The weapon itself was made from what he had done. The suit was like a prison. Every breath reminded him that he had failed. The suit keeping Vader alive was designed to ensure his need for Palpatine. The armor was purposely less advanced than Imperial technology could have produced. The breathing machine was loud and uncomfortable. The limbs were heavy, and the neural connections caused constant discomfort. Everything about it reminded him of losing on Mustafar. Because of the suit's design, it required regular maintenance that only Imperial facilities could provide, meaning Vader could not leave Imperial space for long periods. The dependency was physical and complete. Sith beliefs used suffering as a source of power. The dark side grew stronger through pain, and Palpatine ensured his apprentice suffered constantly. Every breath hurt, every movement hurt, and it never stopped. The only relief came in Vader's meditation chambers, where he could remove the helmet briefly in conditions that allowed him to breathe without the mask. Vader's role in the Empire was enforcement. He served as Palpatine's main instrument of control, chasing surviving Jedi, ending resistance movements, and dealing with failure among Imperial officers. His presence alone meant danger. The first years of the Empire were chaos disguised as order. Systems that had supported the Separatists had to be joined or conquered, while systems that had been loyal to the Republic had to accept that the Republic no longer existed. Vader's role was making examples of those who resisted. Early tests of this role came on Ryloth, where Vader and Palpatine faced an attack by the Free Ryloth movement. Their ship was shot down, and the two Sith had to survive in hostile territory while being hunted, and the experience showed the dynamic of their relationship. Palpatine testing Vader, Vader proving his value, neither trusting the other. Vader's meditation chamber became his only sanctuary. The special pressure let him take off his helmet for short times, to see without the red-tinted lenses, to breathe without the mechanical help. These moments were the only peace he had, and they were also when his thoughts turned most often to Padme. The construction of his fortress on Mustafar was a deliberate choice. He built it on the planet where he had lost everything, where Padme had died, where Obi-Wan had defeated him, where Anakin Skywalker had ended. The location reminded him of his failure and his new life, and the dark side energy there made him stronger and kept him in pain. But one Jedi stayed hidden on Tatooine, watching over Vader's son, who Vader did not know had survived. The Inquisitor program was never stable. Former Jedi who had been tortured into serving the dark side made unreliable servants. Several attempted to betray Vader or Palpatine, while others simply broke under the mental pressure. The Grand Inquisitor eventually chose death rather than face Vader's punishment for failure. Meanwhile, Vader hunted Obi-Wan for years without success. He followed rumors and reports across the galaxy and tortured captured Jedi for information about his former master's location. Obi-Wan had hidden too well on a planet Vader would never search, the world where he had been a slave, a place he swore he would never go back to. The hunt for surviving Jedi defined Vader's early years as a Sith, as hundreds of Jedi had escaped Order 66. Some went into hiding, others tried to continue fighting, and a few attempted to rebuild the Order in secret. Vader tracked them all and developed methods for finding Force sensitives who tried to hide their abilities. Each Jedi he found was one more step in destroying what was left of his old order. The Inquisitors served under his command during this period. Former Jedi turned to the dark side through torture and manipulation. Though less powerful than Vader, they proved useful for hunting weaker targets. The Grand Inquisitor, a former Jedi Temple guard, led the program. His effectiveness made him valuable and made him a threat to Vader's position. Throughout these years, Vader believed his children had not survived. Palpatine had told him this, and the lie served a purpose. A person with nothing to lose could be controlled completely. Vader had no future except service, no family to protect, no children to raise. Vader believed the lie for 19 years, until a young pilot destroyed the Death Star. During those years, He sometimes encountered reminders of his past. He visited Tatooine to negotiate with Jabba the Hutt and walked through the desert where he had been enslaved. But the past was supposed to be gone, and Anakin Skywalker was supposed to be gone. He pushed the memories away, as he had learned to do. Within the Imperial hierarchy, officers had different reactions to Vader. Some respected his power, while others resented his interference in their operations. All feared him. The fear kept people in line without requiring constant supervision. Other officers were less cooperative, and many made errors that cost the Empire opportunities. Vader dealt with such failures personally, and his reputation for responding harshly to incompetence spread throughout the officer corps. The fear Vader inspired was useful, but isolating. Officers who feared him did not share information freely, avoided contact when possible, and told him what they thought he wanted to hear, rather than what was true. This created weaknesses that enemies could use. The Empire used Vader strategically throughout its territories. He showed up at problem areas to remind people of Imperial power. His arrival on a world meant the Emperor was paying attention. Local leaders who saw Vader knew their failures had been noticed. Vader answered only to the Emperor and existed outside the normal military levels. Grand Moffs and admirals had no power over him. He could take any ship, any supply, any personnel. His power came directly from Palpatine, and this power came with total isolation. He had no equals and no friends. At the core of his existence, the relationship with Palpatine followed Sith tradition. The rule of two set up only one master and one apprentice, and the apprentice was meant to eventually replace the master. Palpatine knew Vader would try to overthrow him someday, and Vader knew Palpatine expected it. Trust between them was impossible. That was how the Sith worked. Making matters worse, Vader's injuries had reduced his force power. Losing his limbs weakened his connection to the Force, and the suit's systems interfered with Force abilities. The difference in power between him and Palpatine grew after Mustafar, and Vader could never beat the Emperor with power alone. For 19 years, Vader served the Empire, chasing Jedi survivors until few remained, ending early resistance movements. The years passed without change. Then, a pilot named Skywalker destroyed the Death Star, and Vader learned Palpatine had lied about his children being dead. But to understand that moment, we must go back. The Death Star project consumed Imperial resources for nearly 2 decades. Vader had reservations about the station. He believed the Force was more powerful than any technological terror, but Tarkin and the other Imperial leaders disagreed. They wanted a weapon that could inspire fear without requiring Force users to wield it. The destruction of Alderaan was meant to show Imperial power, but instead, it stirred up a rebellion. Systems that had stayed neutral joined the rebellion, and officers who had served loyally began questioning their loyalty. The Death Star had been designed to end resistance. Instead, it created martyrs. Before the station's destruction, as the film A New Hope shows, Vader sensed Obi-Wan's presence on the Death Star before he saw him. The connection he had with his former master, quiet for 19 years, suddenly came alive, and their final confrontation was brief. Obi-Wan allowed himself to be struck down, joining the Force instead of continuing the fight, and his last words were a warning. Striking him down would make him more powerful than Vader could imagine. The meaning of those words became clear when Vader sensed Obi-Wan's continued presence. His former master had not truly died. He had transformed into something else. The dark side offered power over death, but the light side let Jedi continue existing after death. Obi-Wan had done what Palpatine promised Anakin, but never gave him. In 0BBY, everything changed again. Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan got the plans to the Death Star, a moon-sized battle station capable of destroying entire planets. Vader chased her ship and captured her, but not before she sent the plans to the rebellion. The Death Star represented a new Imperial strategy, Grand Moff Tarkin believed that fear of the station would keep systems in line, that the ability to destroy a planet would make resistance unthinkable. Tarkin was one of the few Imperial leaders who commanded Vader's respect. Tarkin had known Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars, though whether he knew Vader as the same person remains unclear. Their partnership on the Death Star project combined Tarkin's strategic vision with Vader's enforcement capabilities. The strategy was tested on Alderaan, Leia's homeworld, where billions were lost in an instant. Vader stood beside Tarkin as the order was given. But the rebellion attacked the Death Star after analyzing the stolen plans. They found a weakness, a small exhaust port that led directly to the station's main reactor. An exact hit could destroy the entire station. The pilot who made the shot was Luke Skywalker. He had been raised on Tatooine by Owen and Beru Lars, never knowing his true parents. He had joined the rebellion only days before the battle, and the Force guided his shot. The Death Star was destroyed, but Vader survived. His ship had been knocked away from the station before it exploded, and the investigation would lead to a discovery that changed everything. The name shocked him, Skywalker, and he realized Palpatine had lied. His son was alive. Vader discovered his son was alive shortly after the Battle of Yavin. This pilot was strong in the Force and came from Tatooine. Every detail proved what Vader could barely believe. The discovery changed everything Vader believed. For 19 years, he had thought he had nothing left. No family, no future, no reason to live except serving Palpatine. Now, he had a son fighting against the Empire he served, and one of them would have to change sides or die. Vader's immediate response was to chase Luke personally, throwing Imperial resources into finding one pilot with a focus that seemed out of proportion to the military threat. His officers did not understand the personal dimension. At first, the discovery had to be kept from Palpatine. Vader knew the Emperor would want to either corrupt or destroy his son, but Vader wanted Luke for himself. Together, father and son might overthrow the Emperor. His plan was recruitment, not capture. He intended to turn Luke to the dark side and use him to overthrow Palpatine. Father and son together could rule the galaxy, giving Vader freedom while keeping his son close. To execute his plan, Vader needed to capture Luke alive. He tested the carbon freezing process on Han Solo first. The test worked. Han survived, and Vader planned to use the same process on Luke. Soon, father and son were about to fight, and Luke would lose his hand. The confrontation at Cloud City in 3 ABY, depicted in The Empire Strikes Back, was designed to reveal the truth. Cloud City was a mining colony floating in the atmosphere of Bespin, run by Lando Calrissian, a friend of Han Solo. Vader had arrived first and forced Lando to cooperate, so the trap was ready before Luke's friends even landed. Vader used Luke's friends to draw him in. Han Solo was frozen in carbonite, Leia Organa was threatened, and Luke came to rescue them as Vader expected. After defeating Luke in combat, Vader showed his identity. The famous statement changed Luke's understanding of everything. His father was not a Jedi defeated by Vader. His father was Vader. The enemy was family. The truth hurt Luke deeply, but it also gave him hope, the belief that his father could still be saved. During the fight, Luke lost his hand. The injury mirrored what happened to Anakin over the years. Luke chose to fall rather than join his father, escaping rather than accepting the truth. The period between the films The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi lasted about a year. During this time, the rebellion regrouped. Han Solo remained frozen in carbonite and was taken by the bounty hunter Boba Fett. Luke continued his training while planning to rescue his friend, and Vader continued searching for his son. Luke's rejection did not stop Vader from chasing him. The connection through the Force let father and son feel each other across space, and both knew the confrontation would resume. The next time they met, one of them would have to make a choice, and that choice would decide the fate of the galaxy. In the film The Empire Strikes Back, Luke's training under Yoda on Dagobah changed him. He learned patience that his father never had, and learned to face fear instead of fighting it. And the training was not finished, but it gave him skills Anakin never learned. The dark side cave on Dagobah was a crucial test. Luke entered carrying his weapons, despite Yoda's advice, and inside, he faced a vision of Vader and struck it down, only to see his own face inside the helmet, and the meaning was clear. Attacking Vader with anger could turn Luke into Vader. This vision stayed with Luke. He understood the warning in a way his father never had. Fighting to kill his enemies could turn him into one of them, and this understanding would shape how he handled the final fight. Luke had seen what anger did to his father, and now he had to decide if he would make the same mistakes. Yoda initially refused to train Luke, seeing the same problems that had concerned the Council about Anakin. Luke was too old, too impatient, too attached to his friends. But eventually, Yoda agreed because there was no other choice, as Luke was the last hope. After escaping Cloud City, Luke spent months recovering and training. He returned to Dagobah to complete his education, but Yoda was dying by then. His very old age had finally caught up with him. The ancient master confirmed what Vader had told Luke. Vader was, indeed, his father. Yoda also revealed that there was another Skywalker, and Luke eventually realized this meant Leia. His sister had been hidden from Vader just as he had been, and knowing he had real family besides the monster who attacked him gave Luke strength. Luke had left his training early to save his friends at Cloud City. Yoda warned him not to go, and Obi-Wan's spirit warned him not to go. But Luke went anyway. The pattern seemed to repeat, yet Luke was different from his father in key ways. He had been raised with love and had not been shaped by slavery. Luke's departure disappointed Yoda deeply. The ancient master had seen too many Jedi fall and feared Luke would follow the same path. But Yoda also recognized something different in Luke, compassion that his father had never developed. When Luke returned to confront his father a year later, he was a Jedi. He had made a new lightsaber, had faced his fears in the dark side cave on Dagobah, and had seen a vision of himself becoming Vader and said no to that path. And Luke had already decided who he wanted to be before the fight. Everyone told Luke it was impossible. Obi-Wan's spirit said Vader was no longer his father. Yoda confirmed this view, but only Luke refused to give up. Palpatine knew the threat Luke created. He knew that Vader's love for Luke could be used against him, and Palpatine planned to replace Vader with Luke. A younger apprentice with full force power would be more useful. Vader's usefulness was ending. Before the confrontation, the rescue of Han Solo from Jabba's palace in the film Return of the Jedi shows how much Luke had grown. He walked into a fortress filled with criminals, bounty hunters, and guards with a plan that seemed like madness. He offered Jabba a chance to negotiate, and when negotiation failed, he fought his way out. The confidence he displayed was something his father had never achieved. Calm confidence instead of aggressive control. Yoda's final teachings focused on what Luke would face. The ancient master knew he would not survive to see the Empire's fall and had trained Luke as much as time allowed. The rest would depend on Luke's choices, and Yoda's last words confirmed what Vader had revealed, the truth about Luke's father, and added another truth. There was another Skywalker. The revelation about Leia changed Luke's understanding of his mission. He was not alone in carrying the Skywalker name. If he failed, if he fell to the dark side or died facing the Emperor, Leia could continue what he had started. The knowledge was both a relief and a burden. Despite this burden, Luke's decision to surrender to Vader on Endor was made against the advice of everyone he trusted. Han thought it was suicide, and Leia felt him leaving through the Force and tried to stop him. But Luke went anyway, believing what no one else believed, that his father could be saved. The walk through the forest to the Imperial landing platform felt like the longest walk of Luke's life. He had faced Vader once and barely survived. He had seen what his father was capable of, yet the Force told him this was the right path. The same feeling that guided his shot into the Death Star now guided him toward his father. Something was changing inside Vader, feelings he thought were gone. Vader felt Luke's presence before he saw him. Their Force connection had grown stronger since Cloud City. He could sense his son's emotions, the fear Luke controlled, the hope he maintained, the love he still felt for a father he had never known. These feelings confused Vader. The final confrontation happened aboard the second Death Star, which the film Return of the Jedi shows the second Death Star orbiting the forest moon of Endor, still under construction, and the rebellion was planning an attack while it was vulnerable. And Luke's surrender was timed to happen at the same time as this assault. Palpatine had planned the entire battle. He knew the rebellion was coming. He had leaked the station's location on purpose. The trap was meant to destroy the rebel fleet for good, and the Emperor wanted Luke to watch his friends perish. The throne room was designed to intimidate. Palpatine sat on a raised platform overlooking the battle raging in space. He taunted Luke with the destruction outside, emphasizing his helplessness, and every word was meant to make Luke angry. Vader stood by, watching his son's resolve being tested. The situation must have felt familiar. Palpatine had used similar tactics on him years ago, using fear and anger to break down resistance. The battle visible through the throne room windows was going badly for the rebellion. The fleet was caught between the Death Star's super laser and the Imperial Armada, and Palpatine had planned everything. He had leaked the location and the weak spot, and had ensured the shield generator remained operational until his trap was sprung. Luke watched his friends dying in space while Palpatine taunted him. Each explosion was another ship, another crew, another group of people who had believed in the rebellion's cause. The Emperor wanted Luke to feel helpless, to feel angry, to strike out in desperation. And the trick was clear, but knowing it was a trick did not make it easier to resist. Vader watched the confrontation between his master and his son with growing doubt. He had brought Luke here believing Palpatine's plan was to turn him, but now he understood. Palpatine wanted Luke to replace him. The master was preparing to discard the apprentice. This was how Sith relationships ended. But Palpatine made one mistake. He thought Vader's hatred was stronger than his love for his son. When Luke finally attacked, Vader defended Palpatine out of instinct and training. But as the fight continued, his certainty wavered. Luke was fighting for his friends, for the rebellion, for hope. Vader was fighting for a master who planned to replace him. The difference was clear. When Luke ignited his lightsaber, Vader stepped in. Father and son fought while Emperor watched and encouraged, as Palpatine wanted Luke to strike down Vader in anger. That single act would begin Luke's journey to the dark side. The fight moved through the throne room. Luke stepped back, trying to reach his father with words instead of fighting. He insisted there was good in Vader and refused to give up on saving him. Vader probed Luke's thoughts and discovered Leia's existence. The threat to his daughter made Luke lose control. He attacked with anger that surprised even himself and drove Vader back, overpowering him and cutting off his hand. For a moment, Luke stood over his defeated father, ready to strike the final blow. Then he saw Vader's mechanical hand, the same hand he now had. The similarity was impossible to miss. He was turning into what he was fighting against. In that moment, Luke made the choice that would decide his family's future. Luke's choice was the opposite of his father's choice years earlier. Anakin had struck down Windu to save Padme. Luke refused to strike down Vader despite everything. The son broke the pattern his father had started, and different choices led to different results. Luke threw his lightsaber away and declared he was a Jedi, like his father before him, refusing the dark side. Palpatine had not expected this. He was furious that Luke would not turn, and if Luke would not serve as a new apprentice, he had no value. The Emperor attacked Luke with Force lightning. The attack was meant to kill Luke, who had no defense and called to his father for help. This was the same choice Vader had faced with Windu and Palpatine years ago. Two people needed him to choose, and only one could survive. Vader made his choice. He chose his son, seized Palpatine, and threw him into the Death Star's reactor shaft. And the Sith Master died, not killed by someone wanting power, but by a father saving his child. After 19 years as a Sith, Anakin Skywalker finally returned before he died. Palpatine's end broke the rule of two. The 1,000-year line of Sith Masters and apprentices was shattered because Vader had turned against his master not to take his place, but to save his child. But the act destroyed Vader's life support. Palpatine's lightning had passed through him as he carried the Emperor, and the suit's systems failed while the breathing machine struggled. He was dying, but he had saved his son. With what little time remained, Luke dragged his father toward a shuttle, and Vader asked him to remove the mask. He wanted to see his son with his own eyes, just once, without the helmet in the way. Luke lifted the helmet away, revealing a face that was pale and scarred. Anakin Skywalker had not seen natural light in 19 years. The helmet's lenses had filtered his view of the world the entire time. He had lived trapped, both inside the helmet and in his mind. Now, at the end, he could see his son clearly. The face looking back at him showed compassion, not fear, and love, not hatred. Everything the Sith taught was wrong, and everything the Jedi warned about had saved him. His eyes had trouble seeing without the helmet, but he could see his son, and that was all that mattered. Vader's final words were a message for his daughter. Tell Leia that Luke had been right about him. He had known about Leia all along, keeping the knowledge hidden to protect her from Palpatine. In his last moments, he wanted both his children to know who he really was at the end. After everything, all the killing, all the hurt, Anakin Skywalker's last act was saving his child. His story that started with a mother he could not save ended with a son he chose to save. Luke escaped the Death Star with his father's remains and cremated them on Endor that night, following Jedi tradition. The armor that had held Vader for 19 years burned, and Anakin Skywalker was finally free. But what redemption means is still unclear. One act of sacrifice did not erase decades of harmful actions. Both happened, and both were real. What can be said is this. At the final moment, when the choice was most clear, Vader chose love over power. He chose his child over his master. The choice did not undo his previous actions, but it determined how his story ended. At the celebration on Endor, Anakin Skywalker's spirit appeared alongside Obi-Wan and Yoda, showing he had become one with the Force. The Empire survived Palpatine's death, but lost its leader, and the rebellion became the foundation of the New Republic. Luke Skywalker inherited his father's power without his father's hard childhood, while Leia Organa continued her work in galactic politics. She knew Vader was her father, but she did not forgive him, and she did not need to. The Skywalker bloodline continued through Luke and Leia. Their children and grandchildren would face their own challenges, but the Force remained strong in the family Vader had tried to protect and almost destroyed. How history judges Vader depends on who you ask. To the rebellion, he was someone who caused great harm. To Imperial loyalists, he was a figure who turned against his master at the critical moment. To his children, he was something more complicated, and each view contains some truth, but none contains all of it. Luke chose to believe his father had been saved, burning the body with respect and calling his father Anakin Skywalker instead of Darth Vader after that. Whether he deserved justice or forgiveness cannot be answered here. The facts show what happened. Causes led to effects, and choices led to results. Only the people who lived through what he did can judge him, and the survivors get to decide whether to forgive him or not. Leia had a different view. Her planet had been destroyed and her people scattered. The man responsible was her biological father. She acknowledged the relationship, but did not embrace it. Her choice was also valid, maybe more right because of what she lost.
Darth Vader lived inside a machine that kept him alive at constant cost. His armor burned his skin, disrupted his sleep, and made every breath a struggle. Yet, when Emperor Palpatine later offered to improve that armor, Vader refused. That refusal was not emotional, sentimental, or symbolic. It was a calculated decision rooted in how power functioned inside the Sith Order, and how vulnerability was punished under Palpatine. Drawing from legend sources, this story examines the interconnected forces that led Vader to choose pain over comfort and control over relief. To understand why Vader refused that offer, you first have to understand how Sith power actually worked under Palpatine. Even assistance was never neutral. It always came with risk. To the galaxy, the Emperor and his shadow appeared to be partners. In reality, the relationship followed the logic of a Sith system built on suspicion and inevitable betrayal. This framework was codified by the Rule of Two, detailed in Drew Karpyshyn's Legends, Darth Bane, Path of Destruction, which endured constant conflict by pairing a master who held power with an apprentice driven to take it. Darth Plagueis taught Sidious that the urge to overthrow one's superior was not a failure of Sith discipline, but its core principle. A lesson he proved by engineering the death of his own master, Darth Tenebris, as described in Star Wars Darth Plagueis by James Luceno. Betrayal was not a flaw in the Sith Order, but proof of worth, a truth Palpatine embraced when he killed Plagueis, and later applied the same logic to his control over Darth Vader. Under Sidious, knowledge, upgrades, and protection were dispensed only in controlled amounts, enough to make an apprentice useful, never enough to make him safe. Dependence created leverage, and leverage invited replacement. Vader understood that accepting a suit upgrade would mean placing his survival inside a system designed to reward betrayal, not loyalty. Allowing Palpatine to alter the suit meant more than accepting technical assistance. It meant exposing a critical vulnerability. The process itself would require a full system shutdown, severing Vader's respirator, neural interface, and mechanical limbs all at once. During that window, he would be reduced to a non-functioning body, unable to breathe on his own, incapable of movement, and left entirely defenseless. For a Sith apprentice, that kind of helplessness wasn't a medical risk, it was an execution window. He would be putting his survival completely in Palpatine's hands. In most hierarchies, temporary vulnerability is accepted as a necessity. Patients submit to surgeons, and soldiers rely on medics because those systems assume good faith. The Sith hierarchy made no such assumption. Power determined survival, and any apprentice who surrendered complete control to a master, even briefly, was exposing himself to elimination. Vader understood this reality clearly and recognized the risk for what it was. That reality shaped every interaction between Vader and his master. Back in the medical facility on Coruscant, where Vader's broken body had first been rebuilt, Palpatine observed his apprentice closely. When Vader showed frustration about his limits and blamed his suit for his failures, Sidious responded with words that sounded like sympathy but carried a sharper edge. The Emperor acknowledged the suit's problems and the frustration Vader must feel. However, he warned that anger wasted on droids was pointless. Vader needed to save his rage for moments when it could benefit him. In Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, Vader's early instability is shown in stark detail. During a session in the medical laboratory, his frustration finally overwhelms him as sparks erupt from his forearm and blue electricity crawls across his chest plate. Unable to restrain his rage, Vader tears his damaged arm free and hurls a medical droid across the room, smashing it against the wall in a spray of broken parts. Not as a loss of control, but as proof of how tightly his anger was bound to the machine, keeping him alive. Sidious sensed that tension and pushed it further, probing for what his apprentice was withholding. He noted that something troubling had happened on Mercana. something Vader had chosen not to share, and wondered aloud whether the secret served Vader's interests or his own. This was Palpatine's preferred method of control, not command, but pressure applied at exactly the right fault line. When Vader complained that his suit left him barely able to move, Sidious offered no comfort. He pointed out that Obi-Wan had won on Mustafar because he went there with a single purpose. Vader had only himself to blame. It becomes clear that Vader was never intended to be permanent. He was treated as a powerful interim asset, valued only for his usefulness, until something stronger could take his place. Within the Sith Order, he served a specific function, but under that regime, no enforcer was ever considered irreplaceable, only effective for as long as they could be used. The Sith Lords sensed this pattern clearly. Sidious dispensed Sith knowledge like a series of control loans, granting just enough power to make his apprentice useful without ever allowing him to become truly dangerous. Every lesson came with limits, and every gift carried conditions. As a result, Vader knew better than to depend on Palpatine when it came to his armor. He would not trust his master with repairs, upgrades, or anything that affected his survival, because surrendering that control would make him vulnerable, and vulnerability under Sidious was fatal. Vader declared from that point forward he would remain in ward of himself. When it came to overseeing modifications to his shell, he would handle them personally. He refused to hand that power to anyone, especially Palpatine. A true Sith never accepted help that came with hidden chains. Vader's decision was his first calculated act of resistance. It signaled that he no longer trusted his master with total control over whether he lived or died. And Palpatine, being Sith himself, probably respected him more for it. But survival alone doesn't fully explain Vader's decision. The suit served another purpose, one far more personal and far more dangerous. Vader's refusal wasn't only about surviving his master, it was about surviving his own mind. This interpretation is supported in Legends sources, which repeatedly emphasize that Vader's armor preserved his rage by preventing emotional release or physical relief. While most beings would try to heal trauma, a Sith Lord was required to live inside it. Vader understood that comfort dulled hatred, and for someone sustained by anger, the constant burn of synthetic skin and the mechanical rhythm of his respirator were not flaws, they were anchors keeping his connection to the dark side alive. This philosophy is articulated explicitly in the Star Wars Darth Plagueis novel, where Plagueis teaches Sidious that power is forged in extreme conditions. Pain was not punishment, but fuel. A Sith had to feel suffering in the marrow of his bones because suffering was not a phase to escape, it was a permanent component of Sith existence. The Sith Master forced Sidious to relive his darkest moment again and again. When Palpatine had destroyed everything he came from, turning violently against his own bloodline in a burst of rage, Plagueis made him describe the details over and over, not to burden him with guilt, but to drain the guilt away completely. Eventually, Sidious gained control over the memory. He could view the event simply for what it was, without feeling, without judgment. The memory became a tool he could use, a source of dark power rather than shame. This was the Sith way. Trauma was never meant to fade, it was meant to be sharpened. Vader's armor served the same purpose. Every breath he took came through a machine, a constant reminder that volcanic gas had burned his lungs on Mustafar. Every step required artificial legs, a constant reminder that Obi-Wan Kenobi had cut him down. Every limit of his black shell matched the moment of his greatest defeat. The armor did not let Anakin's past fade away. It forced Vader to relive it every single day. But the suit was not the only thing keeping Vader's pain alive. Sidious made sure his apprentice understood the full weight of what he had done. During their conversations in the medical facility, the Emperor reminded Vader about Padme. She had died, Sidious explained, as a result of Vader's own anger. His rage at her betrayal had ended her. Vader accepted this truth. He took the blame upon himself, adding another layer of guilt and hatred to fuel his power. When the Jedi Roan Shrine faced Vader during their final fight on Kashyyyk, he pointed out that artificial limbs and body armor seemed like a strange choice for a Sith. He meant it as an insult, suggesting that Vader's mechanical body was somehow beneath the dark side. But Vader grasped something Shrine did not. His armor was not a weakness. It was a prison, yes, but a prison he had chosen. A prison that kept Anakin Skywalker locked away forever. When Shrine asked whether Sidious had turned him into the monster he had become, Vader's response was telling. He said flatly that he had done this to himself, with some help from Obi-Wan Kenobi, fully owning the transformation and claiming it as his own. And in his final moments, Shrine learned something even more disturbing. Vader revealed that he was the 21st, referring to the lost Jedi who had left the Order. Then he spoke a name that Shrine had not expected to hear. Vader identified himself as Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One. The Jedi had thought that Anakin died as a hero. Now Shrine understood the horrible truth. The Chosen One had become this monster. This moment made one thing clear. Vader retained knowledge of who he had once been, but that identity no longer functioned as a lived self. Anakin Skywalker existed only as a sealed past, something remembered rather than inhabited, inaccessible to the Force as he had once known it, and permanently displaced by the being Vader had become. His armor made this burial possible. Every moment of discomfort built up the wall between Vader and the man he used to be. A new suit, a comfortable suit, might weaken that wall. It might let old feelings rise to the surface. It might allow Anakin Skywalker to stir in his grave. Vader could not allow that. The spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn, speaking to Obi-Wan Kenobi years later, confirmed this understanding. He explained that the core of Anakin, still living inside Vader, understood that Tatooine was the source of nearly everything that caused him pain. Because of this, Vader would never set foot on Tatooine, out of fear of waking Anakin up. Vader avoided his homeworld because it preserved too much of his former life. Tatooine threatened the separation he had enforced. The armor, by contrast, was not about memory at all. It was a condition he maintained to ensure that separation remained intact. When Vader challenged Sidious about the nature of power, asking what good power was without reward or joy, the Emperor's response cut to the heart of Sith belief. Sidious explained that eventually, Vader would see that power itself was joy. The path to the dark side carried terrible risk, but it was the only path worth taking. How they appeared did not matter. Who got sacrificed along the way did not matter. Sidious had his own scars, his own twisted face from his battle with Mace Windu. He understood that looks meant nothing compared to the power within. When Vader pointed to his black-cloaked body and asked if these were the faces of victory, Sidious reminded him that they were not merely physical beings. Vader had surely heard this before. The body was only a shell, and the armor a cage. What mattered was the dark side flowing through both. For Vader, the pain of the suit kept that power strong by keeping his hatred alive. In the end, the deciding factor was power, not fear, loyalty, or memory. Proven strength mattered more than the possibility of improvement. Vader had already mastered combat with his current limits. His fighting style had been completely rebuilt around what his armor allowed and what it blocked. During his duel with Roan Shrine on Kashyyyk, his technique was noted as distinctive. Throughout the fight, Vader kept his red blade straight out in front of him, moving it skillfully with his wrists, only while keeping his elbows pressed tight to his sides. He shuffled his feet or jumped, only when Shrine forced him to. But rather than weakness, this was adaptation. Vader had turned his limits into advantages. He favored certainty over speed, pressure over acrobatics, overwhelming force over flashy moves. His approach made opponents come to him, wearing themselves out against his unbreakable defense before he struck them down. However, Vader's mastery went beyond lightsaber combat. During his fight with Shrine, the Sith Lord demonstrated powers that had nothing to do with his blade. At one point, Vader stopped using his lightsaber entirely. Instead, he reached out with the Force and began tearing the environment apart. Wooden planks ripped from walkways, debris flew through the air like missiles. Shrine found himself dodging not just a weapon, but the world itself being hurled at him. This was the power Vader had built within his limits. Raw force ability combined with deadly precision. The results of Vader's training are demonstrated with brutal clarity on Kashyyyk, where he confronts 6 Jedi at once, knights and Padawans who survived Order 66, trained in the temple, and believed their combined strength might be enough, a belief that proved fatally wrong. The account describes a fighting style that drew from multiple combat disciplines, including the most advanced and dangerous forms, making his movements sharp, unpredictable, and relentlessly controlled. Vader counters every strike with precision, answers every block without hesitation, and does not simply overwhelm his opponents. He toys with them, deliberately wounding a knight in stages and prolonging the encounter for his own grim satisfaction. When he finally killed them, it was almost casual. Accepting a new suit would have meant dismantling everything Vader had already mastered and rebuilding from a position of weakness. Sith teachings back this preference for proven power over untested potential. Plagueis taught Sidious that success did not come from asking the Force for help, it came from taking control of the Force and creating power from within yourself. The power had to come from the person, not from outside tools or gifts. Any new armor would just be an outside gift. It promised improvement, but only after a period of weakness, adjustment, and relearning. Vader would need to change his fighting style again, rebuild his instincts, and develop new muscle memory for limbs that moved differently. During that transition, he would be weaker than he was at that moment. And in the world of the Sith, weakness invited death. Vader had seen what happened to those who relied on potential rather than proven strength. Count Dooku had been powerful. He had served as Sidious's apprentice before Vader. He believed he would eventually stand as the Emperor's equal. But when the moment came, when Anakin Skywalker stood over him with crossed lightsabers at his throat, all of Dooku's potential meant nothing. The galaxy was full of Sith who had reached for greater power and lost everything. Besides, Vader had already discovered something important about his current form. After Kashyyyk, Vader recognized something else. He no longer felt dependent on the armor at all. The suit was still there, but it no longer defined him. The dark side flowed through him with a steadiness he had never known, replacing uncontrolled hunger with disciplined certainty. Standing on the bridge of his Star Destroyer, Vader understood his future clearly. He would remain a powerful apprentice for now, but one day he would stand as Sidious's equal. And when that moment came, it would not be because of improved machinery, but because he had mastered himself within the limits he chose to keep. At that moment, looking at the stars from the bridge of his Star Destroyer, Vader understood his fate. He would prove to be a powerful apprentice, but more importantly, there would come a day when he and his master would be equals. He looked forward to finding an apprentice of his own, and together with that one, throwing Darth Sidious from his throne. That goal required strength, not borrowed strength from better equipment, but forged strength from a Sith who had mastered himself and his limits. The suit remained, and so did the pain. It was not a burden, but something Vader kept by choice. By refusing comfort and controlling his own survival, he demonstrated a deeper understanding of the Sith Order than most who came before him, turning limitation into leverage and restraint into threat. And that understanding would shape everything that followed. Because Vader's suffering wasn't accidental, and Palpatine's control didn't end with a suit. It was part of a wider system built on restriction, obedience, and survival through pain.
The most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy ended up with an apprentice who never reached his full potential, yet few ever question why. Most people see Darth Vader's suit as a tool of survival, a tragic necessity after Mustafar. But that assumption misses the deeper reality of what the suit represented. Across Canon, Legends, and even George Lucas's own commentary, Darth Vader was not the final form of Anakin Skywalker. He was what remained after unimaginable damage, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And that broken state wasn't just tragic, it was useful. It made Vader dependent, predictable, and ultimately far less likely to become the kind of Sith who could truly overthrow the Emperor. To understand why that mattered, we need to go back 1,000 years, to a Sith Lord who reshaped everything. Darth Bane established the Rule of Two about 1,000 years before the rise of the Empire. The Rule of Two originates from the Darth Bane novel trilogy by Drew Karpyshyn, later incorporated into canon through the Clone Wars animated series and other materials. It stated that only two Sith should exist at any time, a master to embody power and an apprentice to crave it. But this rule was never about harmony. Most people overlook what the Rule of Two actually implies. The Sith didn't build their philosophy around cooperation. Their teachings center on domination, survival, and the idea that power belongs to whoever can take it. Bane didn't create the Rule of Two to give the Sith balance. He created it to stop them from destroying themselves before they could destroy their enemies. The old Sith orders had already proven what happened when too many Dark Lords existed at once. Bane's solution came from watching the collapse of those ancient orders. When too many Sith Lords existed at once, their ambition turned inward. Rivalries became wars. Betrayal became constant. The Sith wasted their strength fighting each other instead of conquering the galaxy. So, Bane designed the Rule of Two to concentrate that ambition into a single line of succession. One master, one apprentice, operating in secrecy, building power over generations. Palpatine had already proven he understood this doctrine because he lived it. He had ended the life of Darth Plagueis, his own master, through betrayal. The details of Plagueis' demise come from James Luceno's novel Darth Plagueis in 2012. In canon, Palpatine only references this event in Revenge of the Sith without elaboration. In Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine tells Anakin that Plagueis' apprentice struck him down in his sleep. That's the Sith way. Power is taken, not inherited. And even if Palpatine enjoyed absolute control, he knew the Rule of Two came with an inevitable consequence. An apprentice who attains sufficient power will eventually challenge his master. However, this reality posed a serious problem. Anakin Skywalker was no ordinary apprentice. He was the chosen one. Before his disfigurement on Mustafar, Anakin Skywalker represented the single greatest long-term threat to Palpatine's reign. His potential wasn't merely impressive, it was unprecedented. His midichlorian count measured at over 20,000, so high that even Master Yoda couldn't match it. That alone placed Anakin in a category of raw force potential beyond any Jedi the galaxy had seen in generations. But the most important part isn't just that Anakin was powerful, it's what he could have become. According to George Lucas himself, Anakin was meant to become so powerful that he could have been twice as good as the Emperor. It means that in the Star Wars mythos as Lucas envisioned it, the fully realized Anakin Skywalker wasn't simply a top-tier Jedi. He was the ultimate Force user of his era, someone who could have surpassed Palpatine by a massive margin. And the Emperor knew it because he had been watching Anakin for years. Palpatine had seen glimpses of what was coming. He watched Anakin tear through Separatist forces during the Clone Wars. He witnessed the young Jedi defeat Count Dooku, a master duelist with decades of training and a Sith Lord's experience. Anakin's growth wasn't gradual, it was explosive. He was accelerating towards something that even Palpatine couldn't fully control. When Obi-Wan defeated Anakin on Mustafar and left him burning, it wasn't just the destruction of a body, it was the collapse of a future. In those final moments, even as Anakin burned, Palpatine must have felt two emotions at once: relief and loss. Relief, because the being who could have surpassed him had been physically broken. Loss, because the ultimate weapon he had shaped was damaged before reaching its peak. From that moment forward, Darth Vader was never going to be what Anakin could have been. When Palpatine's medical teams rebuilt Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader, they weren't restoring a Jedi Knight. They were keeping a ruined body alive. The suit became the difference between survival and death. It replaced destroyed lungs, sealed burned flesh, and compensated for limbs that were gone forever. Vader was no longer a warrior wearing armor, but rather a warrior trapped inside life support. The armor weighed him down, its systems invading his body. His breathing no longer came from his lungs, but from machines. The mask was not merely a tool of intimidation, but was a necessity. The body within was ruined, and the suit was the only thing that allowed him to move. But what made the suit so terrifying is that it did more than keep Vader alive. It made him a prisoner. Vader's existence became a cycle. Constant pain, constant strain, constant limitation. Even the Legends sources describe the experience of being Vader as relentless suffering. The injuries never healed, which meant they were managed while the pain never faded. As a result, it became permanent. Vader's body wasn't restored, it was stabilized, and stabilization is not the same as freedom. That suffering mattered because it reshaped Vader into something different from Anakin Skywalker. Anakin had been fast, athletic, and expressive. He fought with agility and confidence. Vader, on the other hand, fought like a machine, brutal, direct, efficient. His style evolved because it had to. The suit's weight and his injuries forced him into a new form of combat, one that relied on strength, pressure, and overwhelming force. And even then, Vader was still terrifying. His cybernetics gave him power, but his potential, the ceiling of what he could have become, had been permanently lowered. His mechanical strength made him dangerous in close combat. His force abilities remained formidable. But Lucas explained that after Mustafar, Vader became not weak, not helpless, but reduced. Vader wasn't just weaker than he used to be. He had lost a destiny. Yet despite this, he remained one of the most lethal beings in the galaxy. His telekinesis could crush and tear apart machinery. His choke could end lives with a gesture. His reflexes and precognition allowed him to deflect blaster fire and dominate opponents who couldn't even comprehend the level he was operating on. In canon stories and comics, Vader tears through enemies like a force of nature. Entire squads collapse before him. The armored machines become scrap, and skilled fighters who would be legends in any other era are simply obstacles he removes. But what makes all of this so important is not that Vader was weak, it's that Vader was incomplete. And that incompleteness created a power dynamic Palpatine could rely on, because Vader's suit had a fatal weakness: electricity and force lightning. In the Return of the Jedi film, we see exactly what happens when Palpatine unleashes sustained force lightning. Vader's systems fail. The very suit that keeps him alive becomes a fatal vulnerability, and Vader knows it. The Emperor's signature power is uniquely lethal to the man trapped inside the armor. The scene itself makes the conclusion unavoidable. Palpatine always had a way to end Vader. No matter how powerful Vader became, Palpatine always possessed a direct way to end him. Vader could intimidate generals. He could strike down Jedi survivors. He could crush rebel forces. But in the presence of his master, the suit served as a constant reminder: his life could be shut off. The physical limitations, however, were only part of the Emperor's control. Palpatine made sure Vader lost everything. Padme was gone, the Jedi Order was destroyed, and Obi-Wan had vanished, and Vader believed his children had perished as well. Every connection to Anakin Skywalker's former life had been severed, which means he didn't just lose his body, he had also lost his identity. And what Palpatine created was a being defined by loss and self-hatred. Vader despised what he had become. He despised the suit. He despised his limitations. And most of all, he despised himself. That self-loathing became a prison stronger than any physical restraint. Because when a person believes they deserve suffering, they stop fighting to escape it. They accept and live inside it. And despite Vader's occasional attempts to challenge his master, he never truly broke free. Throughout the years, Vader sought power in the ways Sith always do. He sought control. He sought leverage. He imagined ruling instead of serving. In The Empire Strikes Back, he even tells Luke Skywalker that together they can destroy the Emperor and rule the galaxy. That's a direct statement of ambition. But Vader was not the Sith he was meant to be. He was powerful but damaged, terrifying but dependent, fearsome but ultimately predictable. And the reason is tragic. On some level, Vader believed he deserved it. That part of Anakin Skywalker, still buried beneath the armor, knew what he had done. The events at the Jedi Temple, the betrayal of the Jedi Order, the destruction of everything he once loved. Vader's suffering wasn't just survival, it became punishment, and Palpatine fed that guilt masterfully. In Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine tells Vader that his anger led to Padme's end. Whatever the full truth, what mattered was what Vader believed. The Emperor made sure Vader's pain stayed tied to shame, and shame is one of the strongest chains the mind can wear. Meanwhile, Palpatine made sure Vader was always useful, always deployed, always busy, always hunting. The Dark Lord constantly moved across the galaxy, tracking down Jedi survivors, crushing rebellion, enforcing Imperial rule. Vader became the iron fist of the Empire, clad in black armor, wielding a crimson lightsaber, breathing with mechanical menace. He became terror incarnate, and that reputation was worth more than almost anything else. A fully realized Anakin Skywalker might have become a threat even Palpatine couldn't contain, but Darth Vader, as he was, became the perfect symbol, unstoppable to everyone beneath him, and never fully free above him. Beyond that, Vader's limitations made him easier to anticipate. Palpatine knew the boundaries of what Vader could do. There were no sudden leaps in potential, no unexpected evolution that might catch the Emperor off guard. Vader was immensely powerful, but Mustafar had lowered his ceiling, and that fact shaped everything. Palpatine's long-term plans extended beyond Vader, and beyond even his own lifespan. In Legends, the Dark Empire storyline explores Palpatine's pursuit of immortality through cloning and essence transfer. The Emperor's ultimate ambition wasn't simply to rule for decades, it was to rule forever. And if Palpatine could transcend death itself, then the rule of two would become irrelevant. The entire idea of succession, master replaced by apprentice, would no longer apply. The Emperor would no longer need a future Sith to inherit anything. He would become the Sith Eternal. Yet even in that context, Vader remained valuable, not as his successor, but as a weapon, a stopgap, a terror, much like a living warning to the galaxy that resistance was hopeless. But all of that was still a fraction of what Vader should have been. That missing potential haunted Vader because he knew what he had lost. He knew that the fire on Mustafar didn't just burn his body, it burned his destiny. In Legends, it's also clear that advanced cybernetics existed in the galaxy. General Grievous, for example, had been rebuilt into something fast, lethal, and terrifying. Vader's suit, by contrast, kept him functional, but it never truly gave him freedom. Whether by consequence or by the choices made during his reconstruction, Vader remained limited, dependent, and vulnerable. Some sources suggest Vader did receive upgrades over time, but they never erased the core truth. He would always be tied to the armor. He remained dependent on its systems, living with the consequences of Mustafar. And the real tragedy is that Vader likely understood much of it. He may not have known every detail, but he knew he was trapped. Every reflection showed him a monster. In the mirror, Vader saw what he had become: the helmet, the machinery, the lifeless mask. Even in the fearful eyes of others, the same truth stared back at him. Anakin Skywalker was gone, replaced by something inhuman. Palpatine understood the devastation of identity destruction. By encasing Anakin in a suit that made him unrecognizable, the Emperor severed the connection between past and present. Anakin Skywalker had been expressive, passionate, and human. Darth Vader was a faceless enforcer, his emotions hidden behind an emotionless mask. The transformation went beyond physical. It was an erasure of identity. His only escape was also his greatest torment. In The Empire Strikes Back, we see Vader enter his meditation chamber, the only place where he can safely remove his helmet. These moments are crucial. In isolation, the scarred face of Anakin Skywalker emerges, gasping for breath as doubt creeps in and memories surface. For brief moments, Vader is forced to confront the man he used to be. But even those moments are limited, because without the suit, Vader cannot survive for long. A cycle of dependency formed that went beyond the physical. The armor became his identity. Without it, he wasn't Anakin returned. He wasn't Vader at full power. He was simply the broken remains of a man who had lost everything. And in a twisted way, Palpatine's treatment of Vader represents the ultimate failure of the Rule of Two. Bane's philosophy assumed the Sith would grow stronger with each generation, that the apprentice would surpass the master and power would evolve. Palpatine, however, did not want evolution. He wanted permanence, as he wanted to rule forever. And that's why Luke Skywalker mattered so much. Luke represented a new possibility, a powerful apprentice with Anakin's bloodline, but without the damage of Mustafar and without the same psychological ruin. Palpatine sought to turn Luke because Luke was the successor Vader could never become. But the Emperor's arrogance blinded him. He never understood the light side of the Force. He never understood redemption. He couldn't fathom that love could survive what Vader had become. Vader, however, never fully let go of it, and that would destroy Palpatine. The greatest irony of all is that Vader's weakness, his incompleteness, played a role in the Emperor's downfall. If Vader had been stronger, more complete, less broken, he might have committed more fully to the dark side. He might have struck Luke down without hesitation. He might have been exactly what Palpatine wanted. But Vader's suffering left room for something else: doubt. The cracks in his armor, both literal and metaphorical, became openings for the light to seep through. And in the final moment, Vader found what Palpatine never expected: hope. When Luke refused to strike down his father and stood defiant before the Emperor, Vader saw something he thought he had lost forever. In that moment, the chains Palpatine had forged broke, not through superior strength, but through love. Vader's final act of redemption, lifting Palpatine and hurling him down the Death Star shaft, became possible only because he chose his son over his master. The Force lightning coursing through him was destroying the very systems keeping him alive. Yet, he persisted. Even as the suit failed and his body failed, he did not. The dark side promises power, but delivers imprisonment. Palpatine believed fear could sever all bonds. He never understood that love doesn't break under pressure. It grows stronger. In the end, the Emperor's most terrifying weapon became the instrument of his destruction. Not because it was flawless, but because even broken things can still choose to do the right thing. Palpatine's manipulation of Vader stretched across decades, but it was only one thread in a much larger web. His scheming began long before Anakin was born, orchestrating the Clone Wars, engineering the fall of the Jedi, seizing control of the galaxy through moves so calculated they seemed inevitable. Our complete breakdown of Palpatine's rise covers every step he took to reshape the galaxy in his image, so be sure to watch that next. And for those curious about the Sith philosophy that shaped his paranoia about apprentices, our documentary on the Rule of Two explores the 1,000-year lineage of masters and apprentices where betrayal was inevitable and every Sith Lord lived in fear of being replaced.
Darth Vader struck down Obi-Wan Kenobi, expecting closure. Instead, his blade passed through empty robes, leaving no corpse and no proof. What followed wasn't victory, but something the Sith were never meant to feel. Using both Canon and Legends sources, this video examines the 5 layers of fear behind why Obi-Wan's disappearance didn't defeat Vader, but exposed the limits of his power. The confrontation aboard the Death Star breaks the Sith definition of power. As Vader sees it, power is not a spiritual insight or inner peace. It is measured by dominance, the ability to impose one's will, destroy opposition, and leave definite evidence of superiority. This worldview is expressed in the Legends book Darth Plagueis, where Plagueis rejected the idea of yielding to the Force and instead described it as something that can be mastered. Plagueis' obsession with immortality showed how this belief worked in practice. He viewed death as a problem that can be delayed or managed through domination. He experimented with extending his life by controlling how his body functioned. However, he couldn't keep himself alive without constant intervention, and the results never settled into something stable. When Sidious killed him in his sleep, Plagueis didn't die as a being who conquered mortality. Sidious later criticized his ancient master, reflecting that Plagueis declared to put the grand plan above all else, yet still became consumed by his fixation on living forever. This failure matters because it exposes a hidden cost in Sith philosophy. Power that must be constantly enforced can never be trusted to endure. Sith authority is not self-sustaining. It decays the moment domination pauses, which means every victory is temporary by design. Obi-Wan's disappearance didn't just deny closure, it demonstrates a form of outcome that cannot decay, because it was never imposed. Vader inherits this same understanding as the Emperor's enforcer. It's baked into how he sees authority, how he approaches every kill. For Vader, authority only endures when it can be referenced later, something he can point to as confirmation that dominance was real. However, Obi-Wan's disappearance in the Death Star shatters this expectation. The Jedi Master does not cling to life. He doesn't fight for control or attempt to overpower his former Padawan. When Kenobi allows Vader's blade to pass through him, the confrontation ends without confirmation of defeat. The Sith Lord has killed many enemies before, and each time the outcome reinforced his Sith training. But for the first time, Vader experiences a victory he couldn't taste. The killing ends the duel without closing it. Even worse, the reality that the Jedi Masters seem to have evaporated into thin air offers no leverage point because it cannot be repeated, countered, or undone. This is where the first crack appears. What terrifies Vader is not the supernatural nature of the event, but what it indicates. If Obi-Wan has achieved something beyond death without domination, then the Sith model of power may be flawed. Vader has devoted his existence to a system that promised complete mastery. In a single moment, that promise collapses. With Obi-Wan gone, the past does not disappear, but instead loses its boundary. The Jedi Master is not just any other enemy. For Vader, he holds a place no one else can fill. Obi-Wan knew Anakin Skywalker before everything fell apart, not as a symbol or a story, but as a student and a friend. Others remember the Chosen One as a character tied to disaster or legend. Obi-Wan remembers him as someone who was still becoming himself. In the book Lords of the Sith of Canon Continuity, the Sith Lord's inner discipline is never portrayed as healing or resolution. Pain is not something he overcomes, but something he repeatedly activates, reinforcing identity through suffering and not understanding. This makes restraining his emotions an active process, not a stable condition. Any disruption, especially one tied to his former Jedi Master, threatens to undo that structure, not because it introduces new feelings, but because it interrupts the system that keeps them buried. The Sith Lord's stability depends on containment. The identity of Anakin Skywalker is pushed down in the deepest parts of his mind and kept there, but it's never truly gone. Vader's inner life is shown as disciplined rage more than peace, pain feeding hate, hate feeding strength. Despite this routine of strict self-control, thoughts drift back to his former life, disturbing his focus. Palpatine responds by condemning this as weakness. Anakin Skywalker must remain dead for Darth Vader to fully function. Instead of quieting Vader's thoughts, meditation sharpens the conflict inside him. Every attempt to silence Anakin Skywalker forces Vader to acknowledge how much effort it requires to suppress the memories. The absence of Obi-Wan removes the last external anchor, leaving Vader alone with the identity he insists is dead, but must constantly restrain. Obi-Wan's presence makes the struggle harder. He's not just a reminder of the past, His survival anchors Anakin Skywalker in the present rather than allowing him to dissolve into myth. As long as the Jedi Master remains alive, he keeps a version of Anakin alive. In the Legends book Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, Qui-Gon speaks to Obi-Wan as a Force voice. He explains that Vader will never return to Tatooine because the planet still holds his earliest memories. The place remains dangerous to him, and being near it would weaken the barrier he trusts. Vader's physical power can't be denied, but Obi-Wan understands that his former Padawan's greatest weakness is the return of his former self. He decides not to confront the Sith Lord directly after Mustafar and continues with his self-exile. In Kenobi, another Legends book, Obi-Wan often reflects on Anakin's fall while keeping his distance. Any forced attempt to reach the Sith Lord risks pushing him further into the identity Palpatine has shaped. Meanwhile, Vader's early service to the Empire shows a bigger interest in resolving individual problems rather than advancing Sith doctrine. His actions are repeatedly motivated by the need to silence lingering doubt about his transformation. This pattern establishes that eliminating Obi-Wan is not a simple strategy, but mentally necessary for Vader to accept his own identity as final. The Emperor's enforcer wants his old life gone. For this reason, getting rid of his former Jedi Master carries great weight. Rage isn't the only motivation, but also the hope that removing this final witness will allow the past to settle into something he can close forever. Without a body, the duel between the Chosen One and his old Jedi Master cannot be converted into history. Sith victories are meant to become fixed points, events that can be cited, referenced, and weaponized. Obi-Wan's disappearance refuses to become a past moment. It stays present, unresolved, and mentally active, forcing Vader to revisit it not as memory, but as an ongoing problem. In the Legends novel Shadows of the Empire, set shortly after the destruction of the Death Star, Vader's internal state is described as unusually volatile. The Sith Lord becomes hooked on unresolved threats rather than strategic victories, repeatedly replaying imaginary failures instead of combining authority. This period marks a shift in Vader's behavior, where uncertainty no longer hardens into resolve, but feeds obsessive scrutiny, an instability that lines up with the unresolved nature of Obi-Wan's disappearance. Instead of relief, the Sith Lord experiences an invasion into his mind. Obi-Wan has become a permanent thought, ensuring that Vader's Skywalker identity can no longer be wholly silenced. With his former master gone, the last barrier that separated the Sith Lord from the Chosen One collapses inward. It doesn't help that Sith conditioning turns confusion into paranoia. After the duel, Vader doesn't treat Obi-Wan's disappearance as some puzzle to solve. Sith training won't let him respond that way. It pushes him straight towards suspicion. For the Sith, knowledge is a weapon of control. The secrets that a master keeps matter just as much as the lessons he teaches. An apprentice is never supposed to know everything, so gaps in knowledge are not accidental but maintained on purpose. They keep power tilted in one direction. This pattern appears in the Legends novel Darth Plagueis. Plagueis carefully restricts what he shares with his apprentices, offering just enough insight while concealing the deeper teachings of the Sith. This reinforces systems of hierarchy and ensures that his students remain dependent. Sith training is structured around the assumption that a final secret always exists, and that this secret is possessed by the masters alone. While this belief keeps them obedient, it also develops resentment and suspicion. Over time, this teaches Sith apprentices to assume that any unexplained power is the result of their master's deceit. Vader was forged in this environment, Jedi and Sith. The Legends book Labyrinth of Evil points to both groups operating with partial knowledge, what they know and what they must assume. But while Sith secrecy exists to consolidate power, the Jedi deny counsel to prevent misuse. Vader, shaped entirely by Sith logic, cannot see or accept the difference. To him, all secrecy is an effort to manipulate. Because Sith secrecy always implies deception, Vader cannot interpret Obi-Wan's disappearance as surrender. Sith logic demands it must be a hidden mechanism, a withheld technique, or a deliberate lie. Acceptance has no place in this perspective. To Vader, any unexplained outcome must be proof that someone, somewhere, is manipulating the board. Vader already believes knowledge was kept from him as Anakin Skywalker. The Jedi Council limited his access to the Order's teachings. They often questioned his emotions and didn't allow him to advance his position in the Order. The quiet bitterness that grew from these incidents never disappeared. Palpatine took advantage of it and repurposed the circumstances to serve the Sith's goals. The fact that Obi-Wan's physical form vanishes revives Vader's resentment, presenting the Jedi Council's behavior and exposing any Jedi secret as intentional deception. This interpretation transforms the nature of Vader's fear. Up until now, the disturbance has been centered on disappointment, unresolved memory, and fractured identity. His old Jedi Master is no longer just a reminder of Anakin Skywalker or a challenge to Sith superiority. Kenobi becomes someone who potentially possesses knowledge beyond Vader's reach. Even more, it isn't something the Sith can pull off, or maybe his Dark Master has blinded him on purpose. Either way would require rethinking what power actually is at the basic level. Vader's fear is no longer limited to his own past or the failure of a single kill. It's directed outward, towards Obi-Wan, towards the Jedi, towards the unsettling possibility that Sith power isn't as complete as he believed. Obi-Wan Kenobi's death aboard the Death Star denies Darth Vader the demonstration of dominance. Since the death leaves no evidence of defeat, it breaks Vader's model of victory. According to the Legends novel Darth Plagueis, death exists to teach others, reinforce authority, and erase weakness. This principle continues into the Imperial era. In the book Lords of the Sith of Canon Continuity, Emperor Palpatine teaches that death must be used as a tool demanding obedience and submission. Power only becomes real when witnessed, and no killing without consequence, spectacle, or lesson is wasted effort. Throughout his service to the Empire, Vader enforces this doctrine. The canon novel Tarkin shows him conducting executions while refusing to grant pardons, proving that Imperial order is enforced rather than negotiated. Each body he breaks becomes proof that resistance carries a price. The duel aboard the Death Star produces no physical remains except abandoned robes. Vader witnesses no fear in his former master's face, no submission to the superiority of the Sith, and most critically, no corpse. From a Sith perspective, the encounter barely qualifies as a victory at all. Sith victory appears to require three elements: the death of the enemy, the witness of that death, and the fear it instills in others. Vader's strike against Obi-Wan achieves only the first. The other two are left uncertain. He cannot use the event to demand submission from others. Also, Obi-Wan's manner of departure makes the problem more complex. The Jedi Master didn't struggle for survival. He appears calm, accepting the moment on his own terms, which removes any obvious breaking point that would confirm Sith dominance. To onlookers, the duel ends abruptly without explanation. Even the stormtroopers who rush to the location are left confused. The Emperor's teachings in the canon book Lords of the Sith emphasize that power must be performed, not merely possessed. A lightsaber strike that leaves nothing behind doesn't function beyond the moment of impact. There is no use for it to compel terror in future conquests. It cannot serve as a warning to rebels who question whether to surrender or continue fighting. Obi-Wan's disappearance doesn't discourage resistance as a visible execution would. In previous confrontations, violence brought a sense of order returning. The Sith Code promises that, through winning, chains are broken. Vader struggles to find victory where the defeated vanish rather than fall. Each layer of reassurance that violence once provided has fallen away. If killing Obi-Wan brings no finality, then the system that taught Vader how to end conflicts no longer works the way it should. Fear takes on new weight at this point, not because Obi-Wan appeared to escape death, but because Vader feels hollow after delivering it. That unfinished feeling carries Vader forward into the final break, where he begins sensing that Obi-Wan has moved beyond any reach the Sith might still possess. Sith power depends on interaction. It requires leverage and only works when there's something to threaten, pressure, or break. According to the Legends novel Darth Plagueis, Sith control functions through consequences. Power is consistently expressed through the ability to exploit fear, loss, and attachment. A Sith victory assumes the defeated party remains subject to influence after the duel ends. They don't stop until they find the right weakness to compel submission. By removing himself from consequence, Obi-Wan ends the cycle that Sith power relies on. By being one with the Force, Kenobi evades every pressure point Vader knows how to use. The battle finishes without anything that can be coerced or punished. Within Sith belief, the powerful always assume resistance from the weak. Even submission is useful because it confirms control. When resistance disappears, that engine has nothing to push against. In the canon novel Lords of the Sith, Vader's strength gets fueled by conflict and pressure, both internal and external. Obi-Wan's transformation removes him from the system. In Sith ideology, extended existence requires conditions. To preserve one's identity beyond death, the Sith must depend on material structures. They use rituals, hosts, artifacts, or sustain influence over others. These methods prolong their awareness by increasing dependence on the physical world. Control remains central to the process. Obi-Wan's vanishing does not resemble this pattern. In Revenge of the Sith, and reinforced through later canon material, Yoda explains that Qui-Gon Jinn discovered a path beyond physical death through communion with the Force. That path requires acceptance instead of domination. Vader can't follow it. In the Legends book Kenobi, Obi-Wan consistently chooses patience over escalation after the events of Mustafar. The Jedi Master understands that Vader's authority is reinforced through pursuit and conflict. Obi-Wan's isolation on Tatooine appears like passive exile, but it's actually long-term discipline. He actively reflects on the consequences of intervention. Every time an action might escalate conflict, he chooses not to respond. This behavior isn't based on fear. The Sith feed on reaction, so Kenobi minimizes his imprint on events to avoid reinforcing Vader's sense of purpose. The Jedi Master's final act on the Death Star applies this discipline in its purest form. In the Legends book Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, the Sith Lord's sense of agency is affirmed by erasing the forces that oppose him. Violence and suppression emphasize his authority. Obi-Wan's disappearance destroys that dynamic. The fear isn't about rivalry. Vader doesn't fear Obi-Wan as an opponent anymore. He fears what his former master represents. Kenobi has achieved a form of freedom that exists outside the logic Vader understands. Sith power can destroy bodies, command armies, and impose fear across entire star systems, but it fails when confronted with transcendence.
The truth about why Darth Vader never hunted Yoda after Order 66 reveals something unexpected about how the Empire actually worked. Drawing from both canon and legend sources, 5 key reasons explain why the most dangerous Jedi Master in the galaxy remained completely untouched, while Vader spent decades as the Emperor's enforcer. First, the Empire never made Jedi hunting a priority, and Palpatine stated this position explicitly. In Legends continuity, specifically James Luceno's novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine made his view clear during conversations with Vader in the weeks following Order 66. The Emperor communicated to his apprentice that the Jedi meant nothing to the Empire. Surviving Jedi like Yoda and Obi-Wan were not exceptions to any rule. Palpatine was certain that dozens of Jedi escaped with their lives, and Vader would eventually have chances to eliminate many of them during his missions. However, the critical point was that their order had been crushed. Palpatine viewed the survivors hiding on remote worlds as having humbled themselves before the Sith. He wanted them to stay hidden, seeing their exile as ongoing punishment for 1,000 years of arrogance. This represented strategic contempt rather than mercy or oversight. While scattered Jedi hid across the galaxy, the Empire's true focus revealed something far more ambitious. The novel reveals what actually occupied the Empire's attention: controlling the Senate, suppressing political dissent, building the Imperial military, and constructing the Death Star in complete secrecy. The Empire faced too few battle groups to deploy everywhere: rogue paramilitary groups using abandoned separatist weapons and construction projects falling behind schedule. Against this backdrop, the scattered Jedi barely registered as a concern. The Emperor's orders to Vader regarding the Jedi were explicitly reactive rather than proactive. Palpatine instructed him that he could destroy any Jedi he came across during the course of his missions. The key distinction was that this phrase meant coming across them by chance. Jedi hunting was opportunistic, something to do if the situation presented itself, rather than a systematic campaign. By the novel's end, when Palpatine considered threats that needed to be rooted out, Jedi were not even mentioned. The assessment was clear: the Jedi were incidental to Vader's actual purpose. In canon continuity, the Marvel comic series Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith shows the same pattern. Palpatine managed targets strategically, distinguishing between Jedi who mattered and those who did not. Even weak Jedi could be important if they possessed valuable knowledge. However, the general population of survivors scattered across the galaxy was not worth the organized hunt. Series like Star Wars Rebels demonstrates that the Empire prioritized threats based on immediate danger. A rogue Jedi like Kanan Jarrus recruiting survivors demanded attention, while a hidden Jedi Master in deep exile did not. What becomes clear across both continuities is that the Empire had far bigger concerns. Building the Death Star required massive labor, political control demanded constant attention, and the military needed expansion and modernization. With this in mind, finding Yoda would have meant diverting resources from these critical objectives to search potentially thousands of worlds for someone who had already removed himself from relevance. Second, Vader's actual role in the Empire was a political enforcer rather than a Jedi hunter, and his missions prove this beyond question. In the Legends continuity, Darth Vader's official position was Emperor's emissary. His function was liaison with regional governors and the Imperial Navy. The novel describes his role precisely. He wielded not real power, but merely the execution of power. He was not the swordmaster so much as the weapon itself. The missions Vader undertook in the first weeks and months after Order 66 demonstrate this clearly. His first major assignment sent him to Murkana with explicit orders to punish clone troopers who had disobeyed Order 66. The Emperor made his priorities clear when he informed Vader that he was not worried about the Jedi, but wanted those clone troopers punished. The objective was disciplining the military rather than hunting Force users. When Vader encountered Jedi survivors during this mission, including Masters Roan Shrine and Bolt Shatak, the encounters were completely accidental. His later assignments sent him to Alderaan to retrieve Senator Fang Zar, a political dissident who had fled Coruscant after questioning by Internal Security Bureau officers. The objective involved political intimidation, specifically demonstrating consequences for senators who challenged Palpatine's authority. Bail Organa had granted Zar refuge at the royal palace, unaware that Imperial forces had been instructed to keep the senator on Coruscant. When Vader arrived with his team of stormtroopers, the situation escalated quickly. Smugglers hired by the late crime boss Cash Garrelin were attempting to retrieve Zar from the palace grounds. During the operation, Shrine appeared, helping the senator escape while Vader confronted palace security forces, and massive crowds of protesters gathered outside. The mission ended in calculated action that revealed Vader's true priorities. Vader hurled his ignited lightsaber through the air above the crowd, the crimson blade spinning in a deadly arc. The weapon struck Fang Zar first, tearing a deep wound across his upper chest and nearly taking his head. The blade continued its path, striking Shrine's mother, Jula, across the back before returning to Vader's hand. Zar passed away on the landing platform, while Jula survived but was gravely wounded. The encounter proved once again that meeting Jedi during missions happened by accident rather than by design. Vader's focus remained on the political target throughout. Shrine's intervention was unexpected, and Vader did not attempt to pursue the Jedi afterward. The third major operation, the invasion of Kashyyyk, revealed the Empire's true priorities and the merciless efficiency of its methods. The primary objective had nothing to do with Jedi at all. Moff Wilhuf Tarkin approached Vader with a proposition that would benefit both of them. Tarkin supervised construction of the Emperor's secret weapon, a battle station already far behind schedule. The project faced engineering problems, contractor delays, and most critically, a severe shortage of skilled workers. The sharp-featured Moff explained his plan clearly. Vader's hunt for Jedi could serve a larger purpose. If he led an operation to capture insurgent Jedi, and if those Jedi happened to be harbored by Wookiees, then the Wookiees could be exposed as rebels against the Empire. Vader grasped the strategy immediately. He could eliminate scattered Jedi while also providing Tarkin with exactly what the secret project needed. When intelligence detected Jedi survivors on Kashyyyk, Imperial forces tracked their movements but intentionally allowed their transport through checkpoint cordons. Their presence provided perfect justification for what came next. The invasion proceeded with overwhelming force. Orbital bombardment preceded massive ground assaults. Victory-class Star Destroyers descended from orbit while gunships and troop carriers swept through the forests. The operation successfully captured 200,000 Wookiees who were placed in containment camps on the Wawat Archipelago. Tarkin later reported the results to the Emperor, confirming he would accommodate twice that number if needed. Palpatine granted permission to transport the slaves to the weapon, then emphasized the need for absolute secrecy. Tarkin was ordered to inform the regional governor of activities on Kashyyyk, but to make no mention of the Wookiees' final destination. All three operations proved that meeting the Jedi was either by accident or used as a cover for other Imperial objectives. Vader was deployed as an instrument of Imperial political and military power rather than as a specialized Jedi hunter. When he did encounter Jedi during these missions, his performance revealed another problem. He was not particularly effective against skilled opponents. This leads us to the third reason. Vader was physically and psychologically incapable of confronting someone as powerful as Yoda. In the Legends continuity, Vader's new body created severe limitations. The suit designed by Palpatine restricted his movement and caused constant pain. During his early missions, Vader questioned whether losing his limbs meant losing strength in the Force as well. His fighting style became clumsy and stiff compared to his former abilities. He defeated Jedi through brute strength and size rather than skill or finesse. During his duel with Bol Chetak on Morkana, an undistinguished Jedi Knight, Vader's fighting style revealed both his limitations and his overwhelming advantages. His technique was clumsy compared to what he had been capable of as Anakin Skywalker. His strikes were mostly vertical, lacking the grace and variety he had once displayed. He appeared to lack a style of his own, executing moves stiffly rather than with the fluid precision of a true master. However, Vader compensated for poor technique with raw power. He stood a full head taller than Chetak and used incredible strength to beat her into submission. The Zabrak Jedi was all grace and speed, working her way inside his guard with broad circular movements. Her lightsaber seemed an extension of her body, yet Vader's sheer power overwhelmed her defensive advantages. He did not need a refined technique when he could simply hammer through her guard with brute force. Chetak managed to inflict a wound to his forearm, but the injury revealed the extent of Vader's transformation. Instead of blood, sparks and smoke fountained from the injury. The strike confirmed what she had suspected. Much of Vader was machine rather than flesh. The revelation did not save her. With a final flick of his blade, Vader defeated her. The fight demonstrated that Vader, in his new form, defeated Jedi through size, strength, and determination, rather than skill or finesse. Against truly powerful opponents, particularly masters of Yoda's caliber, these advantages would prove insufficient. Palpatine himself acknowledged this reality, remarking that Vader should imagine what Yoda might have done to him. Yoda had confronted Palpatine in the Senate chamber and forced the Emperor to fight seriously. Vader, damaged and diminished, stood no chance against the Jedi Master. However, the physical limitations were not the most important barrier. The novel reveals that Vader's real weaknesses were psychological rather than physical. He was consumed by grief, anger, and self-pity during this period. He questioned his place in the New Order, feeling like Palpatine's servant rather than a true Sith Lord. The text describes him as distracted and unstable, barely holding himself together. The psychological barrier went deeper than simple emotional turmoil. Qui-Gon Jinn, speaking to Obi-Wan as a Force ghost, explained that the core of Anakin that resides in Vader understands that Tatooine is the source of nearly everything causing him pain. Vader would never set foot on Tatooine out of fear of reawakening Anakin. This principle applies to more than just one planet. Confronting Yoda, the living embodiment of everything the Jedi Order represented, would force the same unbearable confrontation. The novel makes clear that some residue of Anakin continued to plague Vader, like pain from a phantom limb. Hunting down Yoda would risk the psychological stability Vader desperately needed to function in his new role. By the novel's conclusion, Vader had achieved a breakthrough transformation after defeating Shrine. The text describes it as crossing some invisible threshold to a new world. However, his new priority was not hunting Jedi. Instead, he looked forward to a time when he could find an apprentice of his own, and together with that one, topple Darth Sidious from his throne. His actual focus was on eventually overthrowing his master. In this context, scattered Jedi became irrelevant. They were no different from others who would interfere with his and Sidious's realm. In canon continuity, the comics Darth Vader show Palpatine establishing control over his apprentice from the very first day. Immediately after learning that Padme had passed away, Vader raged at his master. Palpatine's response involved both physical demonstration and explicit threat. He tormented Vader with Force lightning, demanding that he defend himself while Vader had no lightsaber. When Vader instinctively reached out with the Force, Palpatine warned him that if he touched the Emperor with the Force again, he would finish what Kenobi could not. This established how their relationship would function from that point forward. The suit's design kept Vader vulnerable, meaning Palpatine could hurt him whenever he wanted, and the Emperor made this threat perfectly clear. Vader learned immediately that disobedience meant consequences. The Emperor also addressed Vader's desire for revenge. Reading his apprentice's thoughts, Palpatine instructed him to set such feelings aside because personal revenge mattered less than the Empire's needs. From day one, Vader could not pursue targets based on his own desires. He could only act on Imperial priorities as defined by his master. Fourth, a sophisticated control system prevented Vader from taking any independent action, including hunting Yoda. The most revealing evidence about this control system comes from Legends continuity, specifically Sean Stewart's novel Yoda: Dark Rendezvous, which shows how Emperor Palpatine controlled his apprentices. The book reveals a system designed to prevent exactly the kind of independent action that hunting Yoda would represent. The novel demonstrates this through Count Dooku's experience on Vajun. Dooku had installed a red button on his desk connected to a missile in orbit, programmed to destroy his own location. He called it his last card to play. When Palpatine called, Dooku's hand shook as he touched it. When the Emperor's presence grew more threatening, sweat ran freely down the Count's face. Even with Yoda at his mercy during their confrontation on Vajun, Dooku could not act freely because he was paralyzed by fear of his master discovering any unauthorized action. The novel also reveals conversations between Ventress and Dooku that expose the dangers of the Sith apprentice system. Ventress warned the Count directly about the Emperor's intentions, suggesting that Palpatine would use him up. She questioned what would happen when Dooku became the most dangerous being left standing, implying that success itself became dangerous under Palpatine's rule. The novel makes clear through these exchanges that Sith apprentices operated under constant threat, unable to take independent action without risking their master's wrath. The novel further demonstrates how Palpatine used Yoda's disappearance for political gain. When news reports claimed Yoda was gone after Ventress destroyed his decoy ship, Mace Windu asked Palpatine to correct the record. The Chancellor refused, citing bureaucratic procedures and the need for verification. Meanwhile, Senator Orn Free-Taa used Yoda's apparent fate to call for massive new security forces answering directly to the Chancellor's office. Padme Amidala recognized what was happening. Control over Republic security was shifting from the professional Jedi Order to the emotional, politicized Senate. Palpatine gained emergency powers directly because of Yoda's absence. The novel's ending shows what happened to apprentices in this system. Count Dooku ended up alone on a distant planet, despite all his power and success. The text repeats the word like a mantra. Despite everything he had achieved, the Count was alone. This was the fate of Sith apprentices under Palpatine's control. They might gain power and win battles, but they remained isolated, manipulated, and ultimately disposable. Vader remembered eliminating Dooku at Palpatine's command, making him realize that even total obedience and success led to betrayal when the apprentice was no longer needed. The novel also includes a vision where Dooku glimpses what would happen if Yoda ever turned to the dark side. During their confrontation, holomonitors cast strange shadows across Yoda's face. In that moment, Yoda appeared identical to Darth Sidious. The vision revealed something specific and horrifying. Yoda possessed 9 centuries of Force mastery. No Sith Lord, not even Sidious, had lived long enough to accumulate that knowledge and skill. If all that power served darkness instead of light, it would create a being beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The vision terrified Dooku completely. In a flash, he understood how foolish his plan was. If Yoda walked that path, Sidious himself would be destroyed. In canon continuity, the comics show the same control system through Vader's early experiences. The series Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith shows Palpatine managing Jedi targets strategically rather than eliminating them without strategy. When discussing the elderly Jedi archivist Jocasta Nu, Palpatine explained that despite her being weak in the Force and barely competent with a lightsaber, she could end everything they were trying to do because of her knowledge. Palpatine's orders regarding Jocasta revealed his management philosophy. He informed Vader that he sensed his eagerness and that the idea of fighting another Jedi called to him. However, Vader needed to set these desires aside. This was not a one-time instruction. The comics show Palpatine giving this command repeatedly. When Vader failed the mission and Jocasta passed away instead of being captured alive, Palpatine's response was ominous. He simply acknowledged the failure as regrettable, then demanded that Vader return immediately to provide a full report. The Emperor wanted to hear the story in complete detail. This was an interrogation masked as a debriefing. Vader had to lie about the circumstances, claiming Jocasta was careless during an escape attempt. Even then, the implied threat hung over the conversation. Failure had consequences, even when the failure was accidental. The comics also show Palpatine explaining his philosophy of emotional control directly to Vader. He admits that without the Jedi, Vader had almost no worthy opponents left. This emptiness could become a problem. Palpatine admitted he felt the same emotions, hate and contempt for lesser beings. These emotions opened doors to dark-side power. However, he offered a warning about falling too deep. When that happened, the relationship turned. The Sith became a tool, and the emotions became the masters. Palpatine did not want Vader attacking targets based purely on emotion. He wanted Vader's actions to focus on strategic objectives. Fifth, Yoda held special value to Palpatine, making hunting him a strategic mistake. Both continuities show that the ancient Jedi Master was more useful alive and hidden than gone and martyred. In Legends, Palpatine used Yoda's status as a control mechanism for apprentices, a justification for emergency powers, and insurance against apprentice rebellion. The most powerful Jedi Master alive could be discovered and deployed if Vader ever rebelled. Having Yoda's status unknown served the Empire better than confirming his fate. In canon, the pattern of strategic Jedi management shows that Palpatine distinguished between Jedi based on their value. Some Jedi needed to be captured alive for information, others could be eliminated on sight, and some were not worth pursuing at all. Yoda fell into the category of enemies more useful left alone. His self-imposed exile had already neutralized his influence and wisdom. Finding him would require massive resource investment for minimal return. His presence on an unknown world posed no active threat to Imperial operations. The complete answer reveals that neither the Empire nor Vader himself had any reason to hunt Yoda. Imperial policy treated scattered Jedi as a low priority because their order was already crushed. Vader's role as political enforcer rather than Jedi hunter, with his missions focused on punishing disobedient troops, intimidating senators, and securing labor for the Death Star. The control system made independent action impossible because Palpatine maintained strict control over his apprentices through fear and strategic manipulation. Yoda alive served the Emperor's purposes better than gone, functioning as a tool for testing apprentices, justification for emergency powers, and insurance against rebellion. Vader's damaged body and tortured mind made confronting Yoda physically impossible and psychologically unbearable. The question assumes hunting Yoda was natural or expected, but the evidence shows it was neither. Vader never hunted Yoda for the same reason he never attacked Coruscant or challenged the Emperor directly during this period. It violated every rule of his existence as a Sith apprentice, and would have ended in his destruction. The real story is not about a hunt that failed to happen. It is about an empire so completely victorious that hunting its enemies became unnecessary. Yoda's forced exile was the consequence of larger failures. The next video analyzes why Yoda failed as a Jedi Master, explaining how the Order's greatest leader made the mistakes that enabled Palpatine's rise and left the Jedi scattered across the galaxy.